Meeting to order. I'd like to invite Dave Schmidt to come forward and lead us in the pledge. If we'd all stand and face the flag.
Start now. Lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Motion by Councilmember Witt. Is there a second? And what item is that?
One with the resolution of the police department and how they're changing their policies.
Number 3.
Item 3, involving revision of human resources policy and procedure, is being removed from the consent agenda. Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments regarding the consent agenda? All in favor of approving the consent agenda with the removal of item 3, raise their hands. Passes unanimously. This time we'll move on to the reading of the budget.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Tonight is the second reading of the proposed FY13 budget. I'm going to start by just giving a history of our millage rate. Our millage rate is 5.455. That's been consistent for the past 5 years. It's two components of that millage rate, 4.059 for the M&O and 1.396 for the debt service. Moving from the M&O, I will talk about the general fund revenues. For the FY12 approved budget, we had $57.176 million. FY13 proposed is $57,519,000. That's an increase of $343,000. For our general fund sources of funds, our largest three sources of funds would be property tax, sales tax, and franchise alcohol business insurance taxes, with sales tax being the largest source of funds at $19.7 million. From an expenditure standpoint, our FY13 base budget is $52,613,000. We have some proposed new initiatives of $1,251,000. That includes a 2% merit increase with an average, that's an average increase based on performance. We have $3,574,000 in maintenance capital, $2,133,000 in one-time capital, for a proposed budget of $59,572,000. On a departmental basis, this is our expenditures. The largest expenditures belong to the police department, rec and parks, and administration. And with environmental spread across multiple funds, they have a $400,000 impact to the general fund. So with that being said, our general fund source of funds is $56,653, $59,653,000. General fund expenditures are $59,572,000. That leaves us with $80,592 to program. Just a quick glance at our other funds. This would be our special revenue funds, the confiscated assets, 911, soil erosion, cemetery, Lita Thompson, the CDBG, as well as hotel motel. Our enterprise funds, this would be solid waste.
Your slides are behind you. You need to.
Oh, I'm sorry. Our enterprise funds, solid waste fund, water and sewer fund, stormwater utility fund, and rec participation fund. And I've highlighted in the solid waste fund as we are budgeting to use $1,127,000 in reserves this year. That's a function of reducing our fees, our sanitation fees at the beginning of FY12. In FY12, we budgeted to use $1,128,000 in fund balance as well. For our internal service funds, that's the group benefits, risk and liability, workers' comp, as well as fleet services. And then our final funds is our capital projects and debt service. Our total expenditures across all funds is $108,778,246. The largest expenditures is related to police, then rec and parks, and then administration. The source of all funds is $109,194,095. The largest source of funds is property tax, and that's from debt service as well as the M&O and general fund. Charges for services, which is related to sanitation fees and water and sewer charges, and sales tax. To date, we have this as the add-delete list. There's been one item added since the first reading, and that's a part-time public relations specialist for $30,000. That would bring the general fund proposed budget to $60,093,146. So, Mr. Mayor, that completes my presentation of the FY13 proposed budget.
This is the way I'd like to approach this. We've got several folks in the audience I know who'd like to comment. Before we receive those comments, I'd like to first have questions from council. And then if the council are proposing any amendments to this, I'd like to hear the amendments so the folks in the audience will know what the council is proposing on amendments. And once we get the amendments on the table, then we can get, and the council comment on those amendments, then we can hear from the public on those amendments. So, with that, does the council have any questions? Council Member Price.
The number you were referring to, 109.194, in our packet today, that number has been revised to 109.823. Are we not working off the numbers in our packet, or are we still going off the ones from the previous, prior to the first reading?
Your numbers in the packet refer to the add-delete list. The add-delete list is included in those numbers based on the first reading and the motion at the first reading. This is from the proposed budget. My presentation is based on the proposed budget, and then the final slide would add the numbers for the add-delete list.
Other questions? Does the council have any other questions? Yes, let's have a reading. Attorney Bob Halsey is reminded we need to have a second reading.
An ordinance adopting a budget for the fiscal year 2013 for each fund of the City of Roswell, Georgia, pursuant to Article 6, Chapter 6 of the Charter of the City, beginning July 1, 2012 and ending June 30, 2013, appropriating the amount shown in each budget as expenditures, adopting the item of anticipated funding sources, prohibiting expenditures to exceed appropriations, and prohibiting expenditures from exceeding actual funding sources, and amending the Code of Ordinances to effectuate such adoption. Whereas a proposed budget for each of the various funds of the city has been presented to the Mayor and City Council, whereas appropriate advertised public hearings have been held on the proposed budget as required by law and regulations, whereas each of the funds has a balanced budget such that anticipated funding sources equal or exceed proposed expenditures, and whereas the Mayor and City Council intend to adopt an annual budget for the fiscal year 2013 and a capital improvement plan for the fiscal years 2013 through 2017. Now, therefore, the Mayor and Council of the City of Roswell, pursuant to their authority, do hereby adopt the following ordinance. The City of Roswell, Georgia, hereby adopts an expenditure budget for fiscal year 2013, said budget being described below and shown on Schedule A for each fund of the City of Roswell, Georgia. General Fund, $59,982,554. Confiscated Assets Fund, $413,493. E911 Fund, $2,067,054. Impact Fee Fund, $128,000. Cemetery Fund, $23,500. Hotel Motel Fund, $1,039,024. Lita Thompson Rental Fund, $73,192. Capital Projects Fund, $8,083,140. Debt Service Fund, $6,502,575. Water Sewer Fund, $3,353,893. Stormwater Fund, $2,640,301. Solid Waste Fund, $9,807,779. Recreation Participation Fund, $6,484,852. Workers' Compensation Fund, $447,254. Group Benefit Fund, $6,748,527. Risk and Liability Fund, $1,023,722. CDBG Grant Fund, $60,090. Fleet Services Fund, $609,296. Proposed expenditure budget, $109,488,246. A millage rate of 5.455 mils is hereby established as part of the approved budget based on the estimated digest of Fulton County. The millage rate has a component of 4.059 for the general fund and a 1.396 component for the general obligation bond debt fund. This millage fund may be adjusted at a future date based on receipt of a certified digest. This budget fixes the number of budgeted full-time positions of the city at 594. Mayor and Council further also adopt a capital improvement plan for fiscal years 2013 through 2017 as attached hereto, incorporated herein as Schedule B. Mayor and Council further approved the reappropriation of all available funds for FY 2012, approved capital projects that have not been completed as of June 30, 2012. Mayor and Council further approved the reappropriation of the $468,000 approved in FY 2012 for pension plan transition costs.
At this time, does the council have any questions? All right, this time we'll entertain amendments to the proposed budget. Councilman Orlow's.
I'd just like to put in the amendment that was discussed at the last council meeting, which basically is taking the rec participation fund subsidy of $658,445 down to $571,391, and then transferring that $87,054 and combining it with the available funds in the general fund currently. Available funds are $80,592, but we're talking about $67,946 for a combination of $155,000 in the general fund to pay for the leases of the new turf fields, artificial turf fields that were originally in the participation fund, and they would now be with this expense in the general fund.
Is there a second to that motion? Question? Sure, if we've got questions.
The $80,000 that was left to program that came from, I think, is now $50,000 something with the add delete. Are we addressing one before the other, or how are we doing that?
Well, the council, I would strongly object if we exceeded if we didn't balance the budget.
Oh, absolutely.
But I expect there may be some competing programs. So I'm trying to get all these requests on the table, and then we're going to have to talk about that. So if there are these amendments may add up to more than you have money for and balance the budget. But I'm trying to get everything on the table so we have a full understanding of what's out there.
Okay. I guess my support is kind of based on that money being in the the back of it. So
well,
I'm not sure how we vote on that.
There are two ways you can do this. You can either second it for the purpose of discussion, or you can not second it, and it would then fail for lack of a second. But what I'm trying to do is, before we turn to the audience, is to get everything onto the table that's going to be proposed as amendments. So everybody's will, we can have a discussion of all of these rather than one at a time. You've got to compare one against the other one. And so I want to get them all on the table. So is there a second to Councilman Orland's motion? Second by Councilmember Wynn. So we will consider that motion, that amendment. Any of the other amendments? Councilmember Price.
It's not on there, but wanted to add an item for transportation to complete a project that was approved in committee but inadvertently didn't make it to a council meeting, and it's not clear if there's money in this year's budget to do it. There may be, but in any case, it would be for $10,000 for replacing guardrail on Azalea Drive.
All right, is there a second to that motion? Second by Councilmember DiPolito. Any other motions? Yes.
Question regarding the guardrail is that since that's a one-time replacement, would that be a one-time capital item?
Well, you could consider it as a capital budget, or you can consider it as part of this budget. You could consider it coming out of reserves and capital, and we've talked about considering capital at a separate time.
Right. Well, it's really an accounting function. Is it a capital item or is it a maintenance capital item? So it depends on which bucket.
I would consider that a capital item because it's not maintaining; it's tearing something down and rebuilding something.
I would too, but I'm not an accountant, so I was asking our budget director.
All right, I apologize.
And from an expenditure standpoint, it would meet the threshold for a capital item. We could budget it as a one-time capital.
But if we didn't want to draw down on reserves, we could categorize it as a maintenance item as well.
Yes.
It is a capital item. We don't need to categorize it something that it's not. However, it is, as a capital project, there are funds in projects left over now easily could be reappropriated. We can do that now. We don't have to tag that on to 2013. So there are some capital projects that we could just take that balance and reappropriate through this action. And then there's not an issue of whether it's maintenance capital or one-time capital. That's the easiest. That money's already sitting out there and you're not trying to draw down on reserves. That'll be the capital projects fund balance. Okay. So we can take care of that if that's acceptable.
Thank you.
Any other requests to add to the budget? Any other requests to add to the budget? We're not going to hear any other requests to add to the budget if we don't get them on the table now. Councilman Orland.
Is this an appropriate time for discussion of revenues as well?
We have a budgeted revenue. Yes. And if you wish to discuss revenue, I will tell you this. There's been some discussion of that the revenues may be higher than originally projected, but the budget we're working on is based upon numbers. If we're going to revise the budget projection, the mayor needs to take another run at the budget, because you're not just adjusting the numbers available, you're adjusting the numbers that were available to the mayor's office to budget. So if the council wishes to revise the budgeted numbers, I'm going to ask that we start the process over and revise and give me an opportunity to revise the presented budget, because the numbers I'm working from are the numbers that he's presented. If the council wishes to revise those numbers and change the budgeted revenues, I need another approach to take programming those numbers.
Well, perhaps we should just have some staff input on it, because my understanding is back when the original budget projections were put together, and the very conservative viewpoint on sales tax, and there has been continued increases in that, and I think even still being very, very conservative, we could easily add $200,000 to the current revenue side of the budget without any issues at all. So maybe
If the
staff,
council
maybe
wishes
staff
to
can comment.
change the budget projection, then we need to start the process over again. And that's the council's call.
Well, I would think it's two different things. The council can accept the revenue based on the staff recommendation or start the budget process over, but one does not necessarily dictate the other.
Well, I will need to start over again if you change my budget projection. I'll need to have another budget presentation.
If it's passed tonight, it would be an amendment to the budget. Yes, you would have that option, no doubt about it. Anyway, just my question to staff that maybe they can comment on that.
Okay? Do you wish to comment on that?
Yes, sir, I can. Related to sales tax, the projections that are in the mayor's proposed budget are that snapshot in time for what we projected sales tax, and basically that was a no-growth number. Mr. Lee has done some analysis of several of our revenue numbers since our digest numbers have come in, and we certainly wouldn't recommend any changes on property tax, but on sales tax, our trend has been greater. We've been receiving more money each month in sales tax than we had estimated. And Keith, I'll let you provide those exact numbers of what we estimate to be for the year.
I'll start with the graph. This is current year revenue or distributions of sales tax on a monthly basis. The dark black line is the trend line. As you can see in July and moving out till June, that line is on an increasing slope. For the year, we have collected $16,867,000 in sales tax. For May and June, historically, we have averaged $1,613,000. We have received May's distribution. It was $1,615,000, slightly above the average. With that being said, we would collect $20,094,000, now $96,000, by simply meeting the average collections for the final two periods of this fiscal year. Historically, this has been our trend for sales tax. As you can see, since 2009, we have been trending up on an annual basis. We've had a large year in 2010, a slight increase in 2011, and now a greater increase in 2012.
Do we know what do we have a number? Do we know what the sales tax revenues will be next month? We have a projection. Do we know what they'll be?
Beyond the projections, no, sir.
Do we know what they'll be in 6 months?
No, sir, just a projection based on historical average.
My suggestion to the council would be is if these numbers hold up, we do a mid-year budget change. But to do a budget change in the middle of the budget, and a budget revision in the middle of the budget is, I think, a bad practice. Councilmember DiPolito.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I understand your position, and I think it makes a lot of sense. And I understand your concern. However, your budget had an $80,000 surplus. Is there something you wanted in there that you weren't able to get that you would like to add?
I'd love to have a tax decrease, but that was not available under the numbers as we projected.
Well, I was just curious because you seemed concerned that you wanted to go back and take another look at it, so I thought maybe...
Well, if I have $300,000 more to spend to program, then staff needs to take a run at it, and the mayor needs to take a run at it and make the recommendations based upon those revised numbers. If that's the number that we're now considering, I think it's appropriate for the mayor's office and staff, whose job is to make the budget presentation, to go back and present a revision of this.
Okay, point well taken. Let me make a suggestion with respect to the parks maintenance. I think we can reduce that number for the time being down to $50,000. And I believe staff has a plan to use some of that maintenance money for the time being, and then, as you suggested, mid-year, we can come back and take a look and see if we can add that additional 60 based on where we are from a sales tax standpoint.
Well, the parks maintenance budget, are you talking about revising the existing budget or the request for ad that was previously made?
The request for ad from
So-
110, because we do have an $80,000 surplus, so we put 50 into the facility maintenance and 30 for the public relations specialist,
All right, we need an amendment.
$500.
We need an amendment to do that. We need to have, you propose that we put $50,000 into parks maintenance and $30,000 into that position.
And I was throwing that out as a suggestion, so we can discuss that, and I'll make an amendment if that's appropriate.
And you need to make it, put it in the form of a motion to see if you get a second.
All right, I would propose that the add delete list be revised to decrease the recreation parks facility maintenance from $110,000 down to $50,000, and that the additional $60,000 gets looked at mid-year.
You mentioned another public relations employee.
Yes, it's on the current add delete list,
Right.
the part-time public relations.
I know it's on the add delete list, but from the budget that Mr. Halsey read, was that add delete list included? Mr. Halsey?
Yes.
All right, so I apologize. I did not understand it that way. So right now we've got, here's is what I understand. Of the $80,000 which we had, there was, but first of all, we need to go back to Councilman Orland's proposal to revise the revenue projections. And Mr. Orland, do you want to put that in the form of a motion? Because that would change this whole discussion if you get a second and the council approves it.
Right, and again, it's same with any adds and deletes. I just wanted to get it on the table at this point in time to be discussed in the total framework of all of this at a later date tonight. But yeah, I'll put it in a form of motion to review the revised sales tax numbers and adjust the revenue $200,000.
So you would revise the revenue projections up $200,000.
Correct.
Is there a second? Second to revise the revenues projections up $200,000. All right. Other amendments. I just want to try to get a list of what we're talking about here. So there was a motion to revise the add delete list to take that $80,000 and split it 50 and 30. Councilman Orleans, I believe your motion was to take the $80,000 and put it into
Actually, it was
76.
Actually, it netted out to 67,946
67
out of that 80.
You would take the 67, and then there is a motion and a second to revise the entire revenues up by, and just so the council understands, if we revise the revenues and this passes tonight, I will veto it to give the mayor's office an opportunity to present a new budget. Because I think that's, in fairness, if we're going to change the rules in the middle of the game, we should start over again. But I hope I won't have to do that. All right. So I think those are the things that are currently on the table. I think at this time we'll hear from the audience. Unless the council has some other questions or comments. I just wanted the audience to know what's in play. All right. If you'd like to speak, we have time limits of 5 minutes. We'd like you to fill in a speaker card before you leave tonight. I think there's a green light and a yellow light and a red light, and Kay will have to explain those to you again when you get up if you begin speaking. But if you'd like to speak, if you'd raise your hand. Anyone like to speak? Yes. Come forward, please. Yes, you start the explanation.
There's a timer on the wall to your left for those that are sitting in the audience. On the podium, there are 3 lights: red light, yellow light, and green light. The green light will come on when we start the timer. The yellow will come on when you have 2 minutes left. When your time is up, the red light will go on and the mayor will direct you from there. So once you start, you'll need to state your name and address, and once you start that, then we will start the clock.
Joyce Body, 2435 Roxburgh Drive in Roswell, 30076. I'd like to ask Councilmember Orlands, you said something about removing $87,000 from the recreation budget and putting it into the general budget. About 2 years ago, we raised fees on all of the recreation programs. And my question is, so now you've raised the fees and now you have excess money that's not going back into the recreation programs? I'm sorry, I'm just trying to understand. And I also want to ask, do you plan to raise the fees again?
Actually, the current budget takes $155,000 out of it. So I'm actually increasing the participation fund by $67,946. So I'm not reducing that fund at this point in time from what is proposed by the mayor in the current budget.
So he was going to take out $155 and you're taking out less, but it's coming out of the Recreation and Parks Department?
Well, the way it was set up currently is with the amount in the participation fee fund, then they're proposed for 2 artificial fields, and the lease on building those 2 fields of $155,000 would be taken out of that same fund. So I am suggesting we move that $155,000 to the general fund so that's not coming out of the participation fund, and adding $87,000 from the participation fund to that in the general fund. So the net result is an increase in the participation fee fund, a net increase of $67,000. Even though it sounds like I'm reducing it $87,000, but we're also eliminating an expense of $155,000, if that makes sense.
And do you plan to raise fees again?
I don't raise the fees. The Parks Department does. And the commission makes those decisions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Who'd like to speak next? Yes, sir. Come forward, please. You'll state your name and address. We'll be glad to hear from you.
Lee Fleck, Martin's Landing. Mayor, have you reconsidered my request?
You have 5 minutes to speak. If you give us you may proceed. I had considered your request.
So you're not. Please, I'm talking about. Turn this clock off. So you're denying me my request for follow-up questions?
No, sir. You can ask follow-up questions as long as you take no longer than 5 minutes.
Okay. Okay, you can start the clock.
No, the clock has already begun.
No, it's just starting now.
Well, Mrs. Locke, from this time forward, as soon as someone begins speaking, the clock begins to run.
Well, you're wasting my time, Mayor.
This
I lost
is a
10
different
seconds.
discussion for a different time, and I don't want to take Mr. Fleck's time, but we should discuss that if that's the way we're going to do it.
Can you stop the clock, please?
No, the clock will continue to run. I'm presiding officer.
Well, the council shouldn't accept that.
During previous public budget hearings, there's always been a fairly easy give and take between the public and the staff. When you're discussing how public funds are going to be expended, it should allow some explanation, some follow-up. I mean, to curtail people's involvement to limit public discourse to 5 minutes. This city council has evolved into a ridiculous get everything out and we'll answer what and how we want. And no, you can't ask any further questions or I'll have you removed from council. Now, Ms. Love, I want to thank you for presenting me with the information that you did, and I'm going to need this. All those questions that I asked, very pleased with the response and the way you presented it. The one area that I intend to pursue more fully is, of course, the debt service. You're well aware that I would pursue that because based on the January figures, the pro forma, you've deviated from that. And you're going to keep the debt service the same. When I looked at it initially, I thought, well, okay, that makes sense. We're going to have an increase in payment on the principal. Now, what we have here is the debt service in the current budget, and it's showing no principal payment next year. I'm really going to need a lot more information about this, okay? Especially when I went back to 12 and 2014 showed a nominal value of $6 million. I went to the comprehensive budget for last year that the auditors audited, and the number was $6.3 million. I even went back to 2007 when the bond, 2008 bond was presented, and you still had a comparable figure of 6.3 in 2014. So I'm beside myself in understanding why there's no principal to be paid next year. To that end, Mayor, I have one question. Are you committing here tonight that there will be an increase in the M&O millage rate that by state law will have to be announced this time next year? That's all I have. I have 1 minute and 30 seconds remaining.
Mrs. Love, if you'll respond to the question.
Thank you. Mr. Fleck, the previous documents that you put up there are correct. What happened, and I mentioned that in one of my answers to you, was that the 2002 bonds were defeased. So in last year's budget, it was presented. Their first call date could not occur until February of 2012. So the budget was adopted back in 2011 in the June timeframe. So fast forward to December in 2011, we saw an opportunity because of the market and the upcoming call date that we could call those bonds, defease them, in other words, place the money in escrow, and thereby save the future interest cost, which that's that difference. You mentioned that $538,000. Well, the debt service schedule for 2014 was the debt repayment on those bonds we defeased. Thereby defeasing them in February of this year, it took it off the debt service schedule that you're seeing in this year's proposed document. The previous ones, they weren't called yet. So that debt service was still payable as scheduled. That's why that's the difference.
Okay, but again, there would be no principal paid next year on any debts. Is that what you're saying here? 2008, 2002 is done, 2008, there's no principal to be paid.
Correct. The debt service schedule, when the 2008, those are refunding bonds, when that debt service schedule was, the financing structure was set up, we consolidated that with the 2000, with all the debt service the city had outstanding at that time, compared it to the amount of taxes that we would have coming in to fund or service that debt. So the debt service schedule was developed based upon that. The 2008 does not provide us a provision to make that payment early and save anything. So that's why you don't see anything for 2014, and we are just paying out or paying down that debt service schedule on the 2008 bonds that are left. That's the only ones that are left.
So the 1.396 millage rate for next year will be unnecessary?
No, sir, it's not unnecessary. That supports the debt service. The debt service schedule backs us into the required millage rate. Back in January, you know the pro forma, you and I have had this discussion before, it's just a snapshot. It's our estimate based on what we know about the digest then. Those numbers change. They continue to change as the tax assessor's office completes and adjudicates those appeals, gets updated information about what wasn't on the digest last year as it relates to motor vehicles or new property or new construction or reassessments that have happened. So as we get those updates, when we took a look at it at that time, because of what we were looking at in the M&O and the general fund, we felt like there would be some ability for us to transfer that millage rate, still keeping the total millage rate the same, but transfer between debt and M&O to help fund the needs in general fund versus debt service. When we got all the numbers finalized, we got all the budget, whether that was general fund or debt service, we decided that the millage rate would need to stay the same across M&O and debt service. We made some cuts on the M&O side that are in the budget document, as you see, but we are required to keep that amount in the debt service fund in order to be able to service the debt. So the total millage rate, we're not required to advertise anything. Our millage rate is not increasing. The digest did not increase to a percentage that were required by the OCGA to advertise a tax increase.
For 2013, I understand.
Correct.
I understand that.
We did for previous years, and we held those public hearings that were required.
But you may well be into the situation next year where you're going to have to advertise an increase in the M&O if your debt service millage rate is reduced.
No, sir.
You do not anticipate any reduction in the debt service millage rate next year either.
I can't speak to that. I'm speaking to the necessity to advertise a tax increase. That will be up to the mayor and a proposed budget and ultimately the council to decide what the millage rate will be for next year.
I appreciate your answers, but I think deep down I know what the real answer is going to be. We are going to have a millage rate advertised next year. Thank you.
Who'd like to speak next? Seeing no hands up, we're about to close the public hearing on this budget. If the public hearing's closed, I think the first order of business would be to consider the revision to the projected revenues on the budget, which would affect everything else. So again, we have a motion and a second to revise the projected revenues midstream, and we'll hear from the council. Again, I would object to the process because we're doing it midstream. Other thoughts on that? Councilman Eichelhardt.
If we're making adds and deletes to the expenditures after your initial proposal, isn't that also a change midstream to what the budget was proposed? And isn't the intention of the whole budget process is for us to determine what the budget should be for the city, both revenues and expenditures? And I guess the question for Mr. Halsey is there anything in the charter or other legal measures through the state or our own ordinances that requires that? Isn't it the whole process? The mayor may present the budget, but the council is the one that puts it together ultimately and votes for it and approves it. Is that correct? Is there anything that makes us restart the process legally?
No, sir, I don't think legally required to do that. I understand the mayor's taking the position that if you're increasing the revenue estimate, that he wants to have a second one. He says he'll veto that, which would cause him to come back with a different number, so it's up to council how it wishes to proceed.
Councilman Eichelhardt, you asked a question. The charter says that this council has never set the revenue projection. I think it's a bad precedent for the council to vote on a revenue projection. Once you start doing that, you're no longer, if the council sets the revenue projection, not the staff, not the mayor, then there's nothing to prevent you from saying you have a balanced budget, and it's never balanced. So there are two elements here. There is the add and delete, which is amendments to the budget. Changing the revenue is changing the entire foundation of the budget. It's changing what I began and what was presented to me by council. The charter says the mayor is to present a budget. If the revenue projections are changing, then we need to go back and review the entire budget and look at all the options. And that's the mayor's job. And so I strongly object to revising it. I think the best process would be if these revenues hold up, to do a mid-year budget change, which we do on a regular basis. Councilman Orleans.
Again, the revenue projections came from staff, and these were done back in December, January of this year, and it was based, and the one part of it we're projecting it on property taxes, we're projecting it on everything, projecting it on business licenses. We understand, and the staff understands, all of these items could change over the next 14, 15 months. Staff has taken a more up-to-date look at the sales taxes since December, January time frame. They have been trending up. They do a very conservative job every year. Even with this $200,000 change in revenue, it is a very conservative approach. It is staff looking at it. It's not something that's picked out of the air from council member. And as Councilman Eigerhart said, the whole budget review is done at this point in time. And if the expenditures are the only side of it, the revenues can change as well. So in this particular case, and it's kind of a unique situation because in the past few years we had sales taxes going down. So it's an item that can be looked at by the council, in my opinion. Mr. Halsey's given his opinion. We could put all these add-delete items into a mid-year budget and just put them off for 6 months, or we can deal with it now on a very conservative budget. I mean, we could do it either way, yes, I agree with you. But we could also do it now and get it settled and move forward. And if sales taxes aren't coming in, we'd do a mid-year budget the other way.
Again, I believe that the mayor is responsible for presenting the budget, and if the staff is changing those revisions, the mayor's office has a responsibility to change his budget and be given that opportunity. And I would object to the council denying the mayor's office the opportunity to do his job. Councilman Price.
Keith, just had a question regarding the updated revenue projections. Are there any other changes in revenue sources that have come to light, such as property tax, et cetera? Anything else that would either offset or increase or decrease the revenue?
At this time, I would suggest not. The property tax digested come in slightly higher than we expect, but due to the number of appeals and the new requirements of the state law to send notices to all property owners, we tend to have a lot of appeals, which has an impact on current year revenues as we bill those properties at 85%. So I don't believe we have any kind of increase that we can make in property tax. Our business taxes are remaining consistent from year to year. We've already recognized some increase in those fees. Permitting has increased as we've seen development take place in Roswell. Some of those increases have been included in this budget. If there were increases there, they would be very minor, and I would not suggest making those changes as they're more elastic and dependent on a growing economy.
Thank you.
Other questions? Yes, we'll entertain comments before we take a vote.
Thank you. I appreciate where you're trying to come from, Councilman Orleans, but I think I'm kind of overcautious. I like to make sure that the money's in the bank before we spend it, and I know the money that we're projecting now, it's a projection, but I think it's a very conservative projection that Kay and her staff has always done. And I appreciate what you want to do, but I would rather wait till mid-year. I think that maybe the Recreation and Parks Facility Maintenance can wait until mid-year and then help out with what Councilman Orleans wants to do with the turf fields and get the part-time public relations specialist. But right now I think I don't think I would be comfortable, going past what you all felt comfortable with your original projections. I would just, would rather wait till mid-year. But again, I think the Recs and Parks facility maintenance probably could be one that could wait until mid-year.
Councilman Eichelhardt.
That money, and I'm not saying we couldn't have some of it later, but the money for the parks facility maintenance came from directly out of our trip to Greenville, where everything there was much better shape than it was, or a lot of things were better shape, and we thought we needed to improve what was here. And so that's why I suggested we added this in. So if we're going to just wait to try and make things look better, it concerns me, I guess. And then I'm not sure, if you talk about 6 months from now, that's in December, January, or actually from the July 1 date, how much stuff we want to plant and put out in January. I'm not sure that actually is a good idea for how we would spend that money, or wait another year to actually catch up to where we wanted to be. We have reduced money for maintenance over time because of the budget aspects, but it's also then had an impact on what things look like. And that was one of the direct things coming back from Greenville. We keep saying we want to be like Greenville. Well, I think it makes sense to be concerned about how our parks look and deal with that when it needs to be dealt with, not in the middle of winter.
The discussion is, do we revise the revenue projection midstream? Other comments? Councilmember DiPolito.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That suggestion did come from our staff, so I'm actually comfortable with it. But I think you raised a fair point that increasing the revenues at this point didn't give the entire staff and yourself an opportunity to go back and rethink some of your suggestions. So I think that's a valid point. And I think we can do fine with the revenue projections that we currently have without increasing them.
Anyone else to comment before we take a vote? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Councilman Orleans, Councilman Eichelhardt. All opposed? Councilmember Diamond, DiPolito, Wynn, and Price. So now we're to the add-delete list. And again, let me remind Council, we've got, if we're going to balance this budget with the revenue projections which we're accepting, we have on the table, we have, Councilmember, how much we were going to transfer from that $80,000 to rec participation fund? $67,946.
Misunderstood your question. I think I get it.
We have $80,000. If
in
we don't
available
exceed
funds.
If to balance this budget with the revenue projections that we began with, we have $80,000 to program. I'm trying to simplify it. So
the parks
I know you were trying to get $67,000.
$67,946
of that. I know Councilman Eichelhardt was asking for, how much money were you asking for 110? And other folks have proposed a more modest number. We had $30,000 for a position in public relations. Is that correct? And we had, that was it? So, we'll discuss those numbers, the 67, the 110, and the 30. And the first was just so we get this off the table. Is there anyone here who wants to exceed the $80,000? The $80,000 available. You could pass an unbalanced budget. Councilmember Price. Before I just wanted to see if we're limited to $80,000. I'm just trying to frame the issues. I don't see anybody wants to exceed the $80,000. Councilmember Price, your pencil's up.
That's my hand, yes. I just wanted to go back to the previous motion I made, which was seconded, to add a $10,000 for the guardrail, which I understand can be categorized as a capital expense, but we also have an item added in here as a capital expense, and if that makes it to the list, I just like to see it in black and white because it's been brought up now several times, and it never seems to get written down anywhere as an official action. So
it is on the list. We have 67, 110, 30, and 10. And did we get a second for the 10? We got a second to the 10. I understand your case position. We did not get a second.
No, we didn't. May I say, that's a different pot of money, though. What she's referring to, there's $300,000 on the screen that we're not considering out of this $80,000. Councilmember Price's $10,000
Would come out of
was
the
seconded.
$300,000.
It would be out of the $300,000 pot, so...
So let's segregate. Let's not discuss that. Let's talk about operating expenses. Councilmember Bryce will discuss that after we get past it. That your motion still stands, but it's coming from a different pot. I'm looking for what's coming from this $80,000 pot. I'm trying to see the competing interest for this $80,000 pot. Councilman Orleans.
A couple points trying to put all of this together is the $110,000 Parks and Rec facility maintenance could be postponed to a mid-year budget or an early mid-year budget once we see the sales taxes coming in. And I had gotten feedback from Parks and Rec on that as a possibility as well. Secondly, I have a question for City Administrator. The part-time public relations of $30,000, where are we at on this year's budget, administrative budget, and would there be any carryover funds from that would be available for that part-time position?
Yes, sir. We could certainly take a look. In FY 2012, we know that there is some money, I don't know the exact amount, but we could appropriate money out of the current year budget, just as I was suggesting for Councilmember Price's $10,000 capital item, such that reprogramming, we could allocate money out of the 2012 budget for the $30,000. So it would not be in that $80,000 mix. That would be a budget amendment.
So basically, I guess my overall thoughts on putting all of these items together is that the part-time relations position could be covered under money moved forward from this year's budget. The facility maintenance could be done in a early mid-year budget, which would leave just the $67,000 and the movement of the artificial fields to the general fund, still leaving a balance of $12,000, and I think we can cover all the points and still be within budget as presented tonight.
Right now we're discussing $67,946, $110,000, and $30,000, and as I understand from council, we want to try to come up with how to program the $80,000 from those three suggestions. Councilmember Price. Now, we may fund some later, as Councilmember Orland suggested.
My proposal for the $80,000 would be to reduce the Parks and Recs facility maintenance to $80,000, and that would balance it.
All right. We'll hear from council as how they would, and we'll try to reach a consensus here. This might not be easy, but Councilmember Price is saying she'd take the $80,000 and put it into maintenance. And if council members would tell us where they stand, maybe we can put together a majority vote. Councilmember Diamond.
I'm going to take a shot at it. On page 213 of the budget, there are a number of line items in Rec and Parks for projects, and there's a $90,000 item for replacing the solar, or putting in solar panel lighting in solar panels in the East Roswell Recreation Center. Is that something that could be done mid-year?
Is that coming out of the $80,000 pot, or is that a maintenance, Ms. Love? That's a capital, so it'd be coming out of the $300,000.
Never mind.
Mr. Lee, confirm that, please.
The solar panels are one-time capital.
Yeah.
So I know that you and Mr. Lippolito at one time had proposed 50 and 30. Is that still your position, or do you have a different position?
I agree with Councilman Eichelhardt. I would like to see at least a portion of this maintenance begin, and my understanding, and perhaps Ms. Love or somebody from Recreation and Parks could elaborate a little bit on what we could do with the $50,000 and give us an idea of what kind of work we could accomplish in the near term.
Just for clarification, are you suggesting we spend the 80, 50, and 50 for maintenance and 30 for this new position?
That's correct.
All right. That is Councilmember DiPolito, and Ms. Love, if you could respond to his question.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor, and Mr. Glover can elaborate. What we would do, if $50,000 is appropriated and approved tonight, then Mr. Glover would come back with priority projects such as the heart of Roswell Park or Roswell Area Park, or on the boundaries of City Hall for landscaping type improvement projects for the council to determine which ones you would like him to do. We would have to develop a plan so that you could take a look at where we need to put the money in the most visible places for that amount of money. So the plan would change. If it's 110, it would be different than if it's 50,000. So we would be bringing forward a plan based on that amount of money.
Councilman Orleans, I understand you'd like to move 67,000 of this 80 to rec participation. Do you have a preference?
No, it's using 67 in the general fund and moving 87 from the participation over.
Well, of this $80,000,
That would include 67.
you take 67 from that 80,000.
67.
946 or whatever.
Right.
All right. Now, I'm trying to get council's thoughts on this entire thing. Do you have any thoughts on how you would program the balance of the 80?
Well, the balance there would be $12,000 left.
All right. So you don't have a preference on that?
No.
All right.
I mean, I could go with the for the facility, the Parks and Rec maintenance.
You don't feel strongly about that?
Well, like I said, I think we're trying to look at the whole picture. I think the part-time public relations specialist, which we've all said that we need, and communicating more to the citizens of Roswell, I think could easily be funded from current year's budget and carry over.
Taking that as you would not fund it from the 80,000.
Correct.
All right. I haven't heard from Diamond or Price or Wynn. Councilmember Wynn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What I heard from Ms. Love is that we could draw something up for $50,000. I think I would rather, if we're going to do a beautification for recs and parks, I would rather do it with 110, but I would rather do that at mid-year. I'm actually favoring what Councilmember Orleans has proposed.
So you put 67 into the rec participation.
67, 946 into the recs, into the turf fields. The part-time, that 12,000 could be part of the 30,000. All they would have to find would be 18,000. That's how I'm going to probably go on my vote. I think what Councilmember Orleans has suggested is a good compromise of how to handle the money.
All right. I haven't heard from Councilmember Eichelhart or Councilmember Diamond.
I have a question, I guess, for Mr. Glover. What can we do in January to try and do beautification projects? And why aren't we putting our money where our mouth is to actually do some stuff? We're going to do it shortly.
When the $110,000 came up on the table a month ago or a few weeks ago, we discussed at our park staff what we would like to do is propose a number of different landscape projects, and I'm sure our list would well exceed $110,000. We would bring the list back to Mayor and Council at a work session or at a committee meeting and ask Council to weigh in on their priorities. We could do that with just about any amount of money, but if we wait till January, I think if we had the money in July, we start the planning process. The earliest we'd be able to plant would be probably in November anyway. So we could delay it a little bit. I don't think it would hurt us, but I think it'd be better for us to go ahead and make sure that we've got a good plan in place, and it may be a 2-year plan in order to get it done.
But then we would probably plant this time next year, or certainly spring of next year.
Actually, the best time is going to be in January, February, and early part of March to do most of the planning.
Okay, well then I'm wrong.
Do you have a position on how you would spend the $80,000?
Well, that was the key element right there, actually. So I'm fine with the 68.
The 67,000.
Whatever it is, yeah.
The Orleans proposal.
Yeah.
Councilmember Wynn, I think you wanted to be make a comment?
No, I think that did it, because I was going to ask Mr. Glover, it would take a couple of months to do the plan, tell you're going to have 110,000, but we really can't plant. You can't plant in the dead of summer. It would start about October, November, December, especially your bushes, your trees, and your perennials, all that. Am I correct? So
That's correct. That's
it
correct.
doesn't matter if we give you the money now or if we give you the money at mid-year, as long as you know that you're getting the money and you can do the designs now.
That would be, we would do the design. It would probably take a while for mayor, council, and everybody to agree on what we would do.
Oh, come on. Don't say that. So that's how come I'm thinking, even if you did have the money, you wouldn't be able to spend it in the next 2 or 3 months anyway.
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Diamond, do you want to express an opinion?
Yes, that's why I was waiting to hear Councilmember Eilhart's resolution of that, and that's what I was hoping for. So I'm very comfortable if we can do the PR part-time position out of FY12, doing the split that Councilmember Orland's proposed.
All right. Councilmember Price, I think you've said that the whole 80,000 would go to maintenance. It's now my time to comment. I cannot support putting more money into the rent participation program that is in the current budget. I had asked the rec department to prepare an analysis of what programs cost the city of Roswell. And Joe was and Jimmy Analevitz developed a program. They did a lot of work on this. And it didn't make sense to me. And what did not make sense to me were a number of things. The subsidies to non-residents of the city of Roswell, in Roswell Ramblers, was $44 per non-resident. It came to over $10,000 that we were subsidizing the residents of Johns Creek, Milton, and Alpharetta to use our facility. That's what it's costing us for them to use our facility. I cannot support that. I cannot support putting additional money in the rec participation program to support non-residents. Another example, therapeutic recreation subsidy. Subsidy for non-residents, people who do not live in the Roswell, which the Roswell taxpayers are paying for, was $203. These are Joe Glover's numbers. We've got some great programs. We can have a great recreation department. Our athletic programs receive no subsidy. Basketball, football, baseball, lacrosse, they do not receive a subsidy. Where other programs receive subsidies of $50 and $60 per participant. I couldn't understand, and I have not yet today received a good explanation of why we're subsidizing some of our children, and some families are getting substantial subsidies, and some are getting no subsidies. Now, this is not talking about children that are on free and the lunch program, the children who cannot afford the programs. I support that subsidy. But for the taxpayers of Roswell, I do not understand why we are subsidizing non-residents of the city of Roswell. I do not understand why we don't raise the fees to at least get closer to the cost. I don't believe this is fair to the taxpayers of Roswell. I don't think we can have the best recreation department in the state and also have the least expensive recreation department in the state. I don't think you can have a subsidized recreation program that really does everything the recreation program does unless you put the burden upon the taxpayer, and I cannot support putting the entire burden upon the taxpayer to the extent we have. So I cannot support the $67,000. And as to the balance of Mr. Orland's proposal, to take the turf fields out of the rec participation program where they are being utilized and to bury them somewhere else goes against where I've been working on for the last 14 years, and that is to get transparent accounting in our recreation department. In our recreation department, we do not, it's hard to know what things really cost because of projects like moving something that is a turf field and which is used for the athletics program and putting it somewhere else. It should be, the cost of the athletic program should be in the athletic program so the citizens of Roswell know what it's cost. It's an accounting game. It's misleading the public. It goes against my principles to be honest with people. If we're going to subsidize programs we need to tell people what the subsidy are and not bury it somewhere else. So I cannot support that transfer. And I think it's misleading to the people. It's not being truthful to the public, and I think we have a responsibility above all else to be honest with our taxpayers, to tell them how we're spending their money and not bury it in some other program. So I would oppose that. Having said that, we will now entertain a motion, and I think there's been enough discussion on the table for somebody to put together a motion that will pass. Councilman Orleans.
Not quite a motion yet. You're, of course, trying to simplify things and make your argument. You and I have had this conversation, tried to come to an understanding. You have wanted to do it your way or the highway. So we've discussed all these. The fund does cover its charges. The question comes up to, and this is getting into more detail than probably anybody wants to hear, the difference comes down to our full-time staff that are going to be in a building anyway, that are going to be working for the city anyway, and trying to ask them what percent of their salary may go to a participation fund. For example, Hembry Park building is open. There's baseball games going on. We have full-time staff in the building, so they may go out and turn the lights on. They may deal with some problems or issues out at the field or turn them off after it's done. But if there was no ball game going, that building is still open and they're still there. So when asked putting a percentage of their salary, trying to get to this transparency, they're trying to pick a percentage. And you can use different examples around the city, but the question only comes down to our full-time staff. And yes, maybe we could take Joe Glover, who is the director of the entire Parks and Rec department, and take, I don't know, 10% of his salary and charge it to all these different programs that are going on through the city, which may be a couple hundred programs, to charge that down. But what we're talking about here are the main full-time people and not going up to the top management, but it is a philosophy on how much you want to make direct charges to charge fees for people to participate in these programs. The artificial turfs, you have been in agreement with this, in fact, Mr. Mayor, that all the buildings, the fields, in cutting the fields, is all done out of the general fund. These are fields, so it's consistent. It's being the same thing we've been doing as far as those fields being in the general fund. They wouldn't be in the participation fund so that somebody in dance is paying to the fields because they're being used for lacrosse. So you can look at this, slice it and dice it in many different ways, which we've tried to discuss in a logical manner, coming to a different conclusion for tonight. Bottom line, we're talking about $80,000. Bottom line, I think the participation fund should not be taking a hit on a 10-year commitment for the leases on these artificial fields. I think it's a general fund obligation. It's a capital fund obligation. And the department is working on making the fees affordable and directly covering expenses. They have raised them already $200,000, which is about what salaries and increases are coming out. So this fund is already increasing $200,000 this year. You can't change all of the fees in a moment. They're done by quarter. It takes a whole year to change a cycle of fees. So again, as I tried to discuss with you last week, trying to take an objective viewpoint and a compromising viewpoint on how to work these fields in and cover the expenses. So just so that it's not considered the simple sound bites that you're trying to make on it without going into a whole lot of different detail. Just my comments and opinions, and opposite of your comments and opinions. And I'd like to go ahead and make a motion to accept the $67,946 out of the current available funds of $80,000, and moving $87,000 as outlined in email from K-Love on May 29th for the total amount of $155,000 to pay the fees in the general fund. I'm sorry, pay the interest in the general fund for the artificial turf fields that would also be in the general fund. And so then the allotment to the participation fund would be the figure of $571,000.
I will entertain a second after I have an opportunity to respond to your earlier comments.
We could go back and forth all night. There's a difference of opinion, Jer.
Yes, sir, it is, and you will have an opportunity to respond after I make my comments. The rec department has reserves of over $1,100,000. They could easily accommodate a 3.5% increase across the board to come up with this $150,000. You say that it takes a year to adjust the fees. Well, the request was made last year to adjust these fees. I didn't see any adjustments in the numbers that were presented to me. I saw subsidies of $44 for non-residents in the Ramblers. I saw subsidies of over $200 for other programs for participants. I don't believe the citizens of Roswell should bear the burden of that subsidy. I believe it's a real subsidy. It's a subsidy which I did not come up with these numbers. The rec department came up with these numbers. And the rec department may not wish to recognize these numbers, but they are accurate numbers. They are the numbers that they came up with. Again, we're asking the taxpayer to subsidize folks who want to play tennis with private lessons, and they're being subsidized. We're subsidizing a lot of programs we don't need to subsidize. And if this council continues to raise the subsidy, we'll never address the problem. And I think the problem needs to be addressed, and we need to address it now. I don't think we need to bury the cost of the turf fields in the general fund when it's being used by the athletics programs. I think we need to reflect that in the athletics program. If the council wishes to be honest with the public, I think they need to show what the true costs are and not bury them somewhere else. Councilman Orleans, you have your opportunity to respond.
Your point about $44 subsidizing the Ramblers. You know, again, it's not straightforward. It's not simple. The Ramblers all volunteer as part-time people to run the front desk at the senior center. So if they weren't volunteering, and all of those desk people are volunteers from Ramblers, we would be paying part-time people to be there. The Ramblers have raised money and bought buses that the Parks and Rec Department uses that we use for a lot of other programs. The Ramblers have raised money to increase the workout gymnasium area of the senior center. So again, it's not easy, cut and dried. Joe, if you want to come up and comment about what $1.1 million in reserve fund, what that money really is. And also, you may comment about whether we allow private tennis lessons on our courts.
That number came from Joe. That number explain what it is. Summary.
I'm just having to explain what it is.
If you want to ask that number, you need to pull the summary, and you'll see the number that came from Joe.
I'm asking him to explain what it is.
The surplus is actually, I think, $1.3 million. By policy, we have to have, I think it's almost $900,000 in reserve that's required by the city policy. So I mean that's where that is. So we do have a little bit of a surplus that I think we try to keep in case there is emergencies, there is something that needs to be paid for, and we can continue operating for whatever period of time.
So unless we change our reserve policy, then that $900,000 is designated for that, and we cannot just take and use it for the funds or the participation programs.
So you only have $400,000.
$200,000 to $300,000.
I think you said
explain, Joe.
1.3.
If I subtract
1.3.
900 from 1.3, I get $400,000.
And what is that used for, Joe? What is that?
It's undesignated money. It's there in case we need it. If we would run into emergency or a problem, we would come back to mayor and council and ask for permission to spend some of that money. It's the same thing as the reserve funds in the general fund.
And then, as far as the comment about not reducing the amount being supported to the enterprise fund from the general fund, again, it's being reduced this year from the 658 down to 571. As I said, they're adjusting non-resident fees. They're looking at all of the different aspects of this, and it doesn't happen overnight. And they have made progress from last year because, as I said, in salary increases and other increases that have gone through, they've already increased that amount $200,000.
Councilman Eichardt, did you want to comment?
I was going to second, but with the additional comment that we've had this discussion last year, it's the same information because the subsidy again goes to the full-time staff that helps the programs go forward that makes us the best program in the country. And that hasn't changed. So that money's got to be there to pay for those people. Now, the supposed subsidy comes about when you say, well, this part of that person's time gets applied to this program. And that doesn't, it's an accounting trick if you want to use your words. So we've had that discussion. I feel comfortable that we want to support the program to the extent we can and that we're not being untruthful. That's why I had to actually say something, because when you're accused of being untruthful to the public, then I think you're going to have pushback. Because, just as Mr. Orland said, all of other fields are paid for through general fund, through capital programs. So turf fields is a field. It's going to be used by others than just those in those programs. So I don't see how that's hiding anything. It's following the same protocol we've always followed. So, again, I second the motion.
The same protocol the city has always followed was for years I couldn't find out what a program cost. And I finally know what they cost, and now I know that we're putting a large subsidy in the non-residents. This is the first year I've found that out. So we have discovered information that we didn't know. Is regarding the salaried employees, they're dedicated to the rec participation program. They're not involved in the parks. They're not involved in the policing. They're solely for the rec participation program. If we eliminated the rec participation programs, those people would go away. So they are directly tied to the rec participation program, and they should be part of the cost of the rec participation program. And I'm simply saying that the citizens of Roswell, the taxpayers of Roswell, who are the property taxpayers, should not be subsidizing private, tennis lessons and
that's not
and
what's
programs.
happening. So stop going back and forth with things that it's your version versus somebody else's.
No, Councilman Orleans, it is the version which the rec department gave me. It's their numbers. I did not generate these
based
numbers.
on your directive for how you apportion.
No, sir, it was not based upon my directive. It was based upon my question. What does it cost? I did not direct them to tell me what it cost. I said, I want to know what these programs cost, and they came out with the numbers. I didn't direct them to say what the numbers would be. I simply asked the question, and I was very careful to try to get an accurate answer.
Well, we disagree.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Further discussion. Councilmember DiPolito.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I see some good points on both sides of this discussion. I think the Rec Commission has done a good job over the last couple of years of really getting their arms around these participation fees, and they continue to do so. And I agree with you, Mr. Mayor, that we need to make sure that that people are charged fairly, and that our subsidy is fair to the citizens of Roswell. I'm also I support Councilman Orland's position and his proposal here, because the proposal and the budget was not supported by the Rec Commission, and they had concerns over that. They do support this. I don't believe they've had a formal vote on it, but informally they do support this, and I think it's a reasonable compromise that actually gets through and works through both of your points. And I know the Rec Commission will continue to work on these fees and will continue to get us closer to where you'd like to be, Mr. Mayor. So I support this.
Further discussion. Councilmember Diamond.
I agree. I think this points out the delicate nature of this. I think, dealing with programs like Rec and Parks and, is very much akin to school programs. You can say what an average child costs to educate, but that doesn't take into account the child with special needs or the child that has free and reduced lunch or the child that needs special accommodations. All those have to be in the mix to make it work, but it can't be evenly split. And yes, the staff is tied directly to programs, but I don't think it's an even one-for-one kind of a formula. I think it's a much more complicated formula, and I think the Rec Commission, as they've become aware of this in the last year and a half, have been diligent about it. I think some of them would tell you they thought they were volunteering to be on the Rec Commission, and they've been in accounting for the last year. But I think, we're hopefully getting to a point where they're recognizing it, they're making adjustments, they're making changes, and, we're still reducing, in effect, their operating subsidy. And I'm comfortable that we're getting closer to where we need to be. I think, as Rich said, it was not always something that everybody's excited about either way, which means maybe we've reached a fair compromise. But I feel like we need to come to some middle ground to keep going forward on getting it where it needs to be. I think you're always going to have gymnastics. It's always going to cost more than badminton, because it's just the nature of what you've got in it. So, as long as we have programs that are different and have different strengths and bring different things to our city, it's never going to be an equitable, easy formula. And I think this is a compromise that can get us closer to where we need to be.
Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Councilman Orleans, Eichelhart, Wynn, DiPolito, and Diamond in favor. All opposed? That is Price. That would be the amendments to the budget. Now we need to entertain a motion to pass the budget as amended.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move forward with a motion. I do have a question. Is there a preference to separate out the capital improvement from the budget?
That would be my preference, but you're making the motion.
Okay, I will make the motion to approve the budget as submitted with the amendment recommended by Councilman Orleans, and with the note that the part-time public relations specialist will be funded from 2012 fiscal year 2012 funds, and that we will take a look at funding the recreation and parks facility maintenance in
this is what I would prefer. You're sort of mixing motions. I need a motion on the budget, and you can make a motion on these other items separately, but if we can just get a motion on the budget itself, and then you can make these separate motions on these alternates.
We'll just make the motion like you did this.
I understand you support the...
Sure how to do that.
Well, you can make a motion to approve the budget with Councilmember Orleans' proposal, then make another motion to approve funding this position from, or you can make that first. But I mean, I prefer to sort of stick to the issue at hand rather than talking about amending current year budgets.
I understand your point. Okay.
Mrs. Love would like to comment before we move forward.
Councilmember DiPolito, before the motion, could I ask for a consideration of the money that is left over from the $80,000, the sum $12,000? May we put that in operating contingency so that we have a true balanced budget and we're not having excess revenues over expenditures when the budget is adopted?
I will make that. Do I need to make a separate motion for us to vote on as an amendment?
You can include that
as part of my amendment.
You can make that your motion.
Thank you, sir.
I move to approve the budget as submitted with the amendment proposed by Councilman Orland regarding the rec participation fund. Also removing Schedule B, the capital improvement program, to be voted on under a separate motion. And for the $12,646 remaining to be placed in operating contingency.
A second.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion. All in favor of the motion, raise your hands. Discussion. Councilmember Price.
Now, regarding the add delete list in our packet, with the 29,408 or any other increase in revenues. That is not part of this motion, is that correct?
I don't understand the question.
Correct. We would go back to the original $19,700,000 for sales tax.
Revenue projections are the original revenue projections.
Okay,
We can address, if things hold up, we can do a mid-year budget.
Councilwoman Price, the intent of my motion was to go back to the original budget. And
The first
not-
reading.
The first, and not to include the add delete list.
Right, but does not the ordinance that we're voting on reflect a number that includes the current add-delete list as in the packet?
It does, and we would not include, we would go back to the first reading, which would be the proposed budget, and then that would exclude the revenue increase in sales tax, and then we would add Councilmember Orland's addition, as well as placing the additional $12,000 into operating contingency.
Mr. Mayor, I need to amend my motion.
Yes? We'll have to start over again and get another second.
No, I just realized the sidewalk connectivity is on the add delete list, but I can add that in the capital improvement program.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Further discussion. Councilmember Price.
I'd like to see a number that we're actually working with. Can we see that?
Yes. That would be the revenue numbers that we are working with for the general fund.
Okay, so it's the one dated 4/27/2012 of those that we have received?
Yes.
Okay, so we take that one out. Go back to this one.
Other questions? Councilmember Price, do you have any other questions?
Again, there are so many different things that we have received. It's hard to know what our number is that we're trying to reconcile to.
Mrs. Love or?
Yes, I can help out, yes. Keith, why don't do you have the add delete up here?
Yes.
With the additional numbers. Councilmember Price, the ordinance, should this pass tonight, you wouldn't be signing the ordinance tonight. We would have to adjust the numbers because the second reading, as Mr. Halsey read it, had that add delete list incorporated into it. So since you've made changes to that, we would be changing that, and then you would be signing those revised numbers. So if you want to see what the expenditure number will be tonight, we can certainly calculate that.
We're doing it now.
Right there. So if you want that bottom number, because the only thing that changes will be the Rec and Parks number, community relations, a part-time will go away off of that add delete list because that will be funded out of 2012. And then we have the capital projects consideration.
That would be the number. You would have general fund source of revenues of $59,653,146 based on the amendment proposed by Councilmember Orleans. And in this motion, the $80,592 would be split between paying for the financing of the turf fields and placing the additional funds into operating contingency.
So that 8592 would be added to that expenditure number.
Right, the 87 would come over too.
Correct. And the capital would come over,
The capital would come
Right.
over.
$1.5 million. So we can provide a schedule. I mean, if your consideration is that you would like to see it all together, then certainly we can be directed to provide that. We couldn't do it right this minute. We would
We
have
have
to
a
take a
motion,
break.
I don't think we,
Okay. We can't do it. We can tell you what the number is, but we can't produce.
how long would it take us to produce that number?
Well, we can produce the number as far as seeing it. I mean,
I'm just trying to decide whether it's feasible to do
Well,
this.
here's the issue. I want to make really sure before we read out a final number. It's much easier to do it off the add delete because, guys, we've got to bring over the 155 outer rec participation fund, their net decrease. I mean, you've got to transfer over the 87 over to general fund, decrease the subsidy from 653 to 5, whatever.
Yes.
The net's going to be the same, but we've got to do it off those line items and then incorporate the 155 out of general fund.
Yes.
Plus, on the capital side, take the $1.5 million out of rec participation fund and add it over into general fund. So there's a number of accounting
things need to be
that are
moved
moving pieces that the net is not any different than what we're showing you, but what fund and what line
How
item.
long would it take that to us to put that together?
Mr. Lee.
15 minutes.
All right. We're going to defer the vote for that 15 minutes. But in the meantime, we're going to proceed with other discussion. I know, Mr. DiPolito, you wanted to discuss funding a part-time position from current year's budget. You want to make a motion on that? We'll entertain that motion if you'd like to make it.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we've had a lot of requests from the public to beef up the amount of communications we have with the public, and there's just a desire for more information to get out there. And one of the ways that we'd like to do that is by including a part-time person to help out our staff so that we can inform our citizens of what we're doing here at the city. And that was one of the main requests that we had from the citizen survey that we put together last year. So we'd like to go ahead and add that as a part-time position. I'd suggest that we fund that out of our current year 2012 budget.
You wish to make a motion?
That's my motion.
Do we have a second? Further discussion. Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Any discussion by council? Councilmember Price.
Well, this only came up officially today by an email this afternoon, and I just don't know that we've gone through the proper process of vetting this out. So I would not be in favor of doing that today.
That would be ultimately for council to decide. I am entertaining the motion, and we will vote on it tonight, or it can be a yes.
Actually, this was discussed at length at our last administration committee meeting, and the council seemed to support it, which is why it was brought forward as part of the budget process. And I supported Councilman Orland's suggestion to move it to 2012, which I think is a very good idea.
We have a motion and a second. Further discussion. Councilmember Price.
But did we, at that time, move it forward to council for a vote?
Whether it moved forward to council for a vote or not, I'm entertaining the motion.
Is it on the agenda for this evening?
I'm entertaining the motion. It is on the add delete list, so it wasn't there as in the current form, but I am entertaining the motion. We have a motion and a second. Further discussion. Anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Any further discussion by council? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. That is Orleans, Eigelhart, Diamond, Wynn, and DiPolito in favor. All opposed? That would be Price. Is there another motion?
I would like to propose that we, well, let me first ask a technical question before I make my motion. We had discussed taking the $110,000 for park maintenance and including that at mid-year. Do we need to act on that this evening, or should we just...
That would be mid-year.
Good suggestion. Right?
Well,
Ken,
I don't mean...
Very efficient.
can I make one suggestion though? With the
I think it's
400,000, they
appropriate
apparently
to
got
make
sitting
mid-year
around.
budget changes at mid-year.
Well, I guess I was referring to committing to the discussion, but we will, I guess we're on record to commit to that discussion. All right. My next motion will be for the...
Comment about that.
Councilman Eichelhart, make comment.
For the things that need to be planted in October, November, December, which obviously could not be paid for until January with a mid-year, if they maybe could come forward before that and tell us what that is, and we could include it in wherever it's going to come from at that time.
I'm sure they'll
They might have, 400,000 sitting out somewhere?
Well, if it's trees, we already have a lot of money for tree fund. If it's planting trees, if it's maintaining trees, that's different. All right.
My next motion would be for the capital improvement program, Schedule B. I move that we approve the capital improvement program as submitted, with the addition of $300,000 for sidewalk connectivity and $10,000 for a guardrail along Riverside Azalea.
We have a motion. Is there a second? Motion by Councilmember DiPolito, second by Councilmember Wynn. Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments about that motion? Further discussion by council? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. That's unanimous. Any other motions regarding the budget? We'll take a 10-minute recess. Okay, here you go.
Got to straighten it out now. I'm going to go pick up a couple minutes. I handed out two items to printouts. The first is on the OMO. This is a recapture of the items that we've discussed through the first reading and second reading. And I'll point you to the bottom line. The general fund remains balanced. It's a zero. And the rec participation fund, which is an enterprise fund, we have revenues in excess of expenditures by $67,000. And then for the capital projects fund, it is also zero, so it's also in balance. You will see where we had revenue increases of $29,408 as well as $200,000. That is negated by the $229,408. That's under general fund. We have two items related to capital in the general fund, the $300,000 as well as the $10,000. That's on the top part of the sheet. At the bottom of the sheet, you will see where we've added $300,000 for the expenditures related to the sidewalk connectivity. the $155,000 for the financing payment for the turf fields, the $10,000 for the removement of the barrier at Azalea Drive, and $12,646 into operating contingency. You'll see where we've made moves from the rec participation fund regarding not the subsidy, but the reduction in the subsidy from the general fund, as well as removing the $1,500,000 in revenue from financing, the expenditure of paying for the turf fields, as well as the expenditure in that fund. Those have been moved to the capital projects fund. The sheet that has the green titles, the top part of this sheet is the original budget that was presented. There are three funds that will change. That will be the general fund, rec participation fund, and the capital projects fund. So you'll see that at the bottom of this sheet. The cumulative change is $532,946 for the source of funds and $545,592 for the use of funds. That primarily is related to the capital projects being accounted twice and the movement of the expenditure for the turf fields from the rec participation fund to the capital projects fund. So our total source of funds is $109,727,041. Our use of funds is $109,323,838.
Councilmember Bryce, do you have any questions?
Yeah, can you explain that 403,000, the bottom right corner?
Those would be where the revenues are in excess of the expenditures for any given fund, like the soil erosion fund, the source of funds.
All funds, okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So is this a balanced budget?
Yes, ma'am, it's a balanced budget.
Any further discussion before we take a vote? All in favor of the motion? And this was the motion to approve the budget with the Orleans amendment and the moving turf fields and moving 67,000 from the 80,000 and putting money from the balance in the contingency?
Yeah. And the capital.
Well, the cap, we're not voting on the
separate budget.
That's a separate. We're not voting on the capital round.
Okay.
This is on the operating budget. We already voted on the capital. Yes. Unanimous. So this is the general fund. Well, the operating budget without the capital budget. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, raise your hands. That is unanimous.
Mr. Mayor, may I make a comment?
Yes, you may.
As a follow-up, I just wanted to commend our staff for a job well done. I think this is a very good budget, and our strategic budget planning and budgeting group did a great job. And Keith and I have spent a lot of hours together having discussions and combing through the budget. And some of the highlights we have, which I think are pretty exciting, that despite having a reduction in property taxes of $300,000, we're still able to balance the budget. We've also had a reduction in the number of full-time employees by 14. We've maintained the existing millage rate for the 5th consecutive year, and we had reduced it for a couple of years prior to that. We've added 3 athletic turf fields. We've added 10 police officers. And we've included over $6 million in capital projects. So I think it's a good budget, and thank you very much for all your efforts.
And we appreciate you. Thank you.
Next on the agenda would be approval of the millage rate. So we've had the second reading for the millage rate.
Ordinance to adopt millage rate, whereas the mayor and council of the city of Roswell are the governing authority of the city of Roswell, whereas the governing authority of the city of Roswell is authorized by state law at OCGA section 48-5-32 to set the millage rate for the collection of ad valorem taxes, whereas all required notices have been published or are scheduled to be published in a newspaper of general circulation throughout the jurisdiction pursuant to such statute. Now, therefore, the mayor and council of the city of Roswell wish to establish a millage rate of 5.455. The millage rate has a component of 4.059 for the general fund operating and capital improvements budget and a 1.396 mills component for servicing bonded indebtedness. The millage rate may require adjustment upon approval of a certified tax digest for the year 2012.
Any questions? Do we have a motion for approval?
Move to approve.
Motion by Councilmember DiPolito to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Orleans. Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Any further discussion by council? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously. Next, we have Administration and Finance Department. Councilmember Rich DiPolito.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This item is approval of a resolution to accept the 2012 Home Investment Partnership Act grant in the amount of $106,655 and budget amendment 2211-5000-05-30-12A. Mr. Fisher.
Thank you, Councilmember DiPolito. This is the home grant worth $106,655 plus the city's match. $50,000 of this grant would go towards the Roswell Housing Authority for a redevelopment project they're doing called the Veranda at Groveway. $45,989 would go to North Georgia Community Housing Development Corporation, which is an affiliate of Habitat. These are both community housing development organizations that are qualified to be able to receive these funds. They are the only two that we have qualified for these funds. The remaining funds will be used for administration, and we're requesting your approval of the resolution to accept these funds.
Does the council have any questions? Do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Do we have a second? Motion by Councilmember DiPolito, second by Councilmember Orleans. Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously.
The next item is approval of the priorities for the 2013 Community Development Block Grant CDBG Entitlement Program. Mr. Fisher.
Thank you, Councilmember Orleans. Each year the City of Roswell receives CDBG funding. The 2013 CDBG funding, we have priorities that we go through each year, and I know Mayor and Council has been discussing some of these priorities for 2013. There's one particular item, this $177,587. In the past year, we have used that with the city for a city project. In the 2013 funding of the CDBG, we would like to go ahead and ask your approval for that priority to be used for the redevelopment in the Groveway community for the Veranda at Groveway, which is a project that the city is hopefully going to be supporting as it comes up in the future. We have an item coming up to talk about that. But we're asking for your priority to identify the CDBG funding from the city's portion for that project.
It's my understanding this will help the project in getting points toward a $12 million grant?
Correct. There's about $9 million for some tax credits they're looking at. We'll be talking about that as the next item. Once we get this one completed, this will be a part of the support that the city will be giving to get points on a score sheet to be able to get those credits, which will be real key for the project.
Does the council have any questions? Do we have a motion?
Yes, I'd like to move to approve. This is the first project that we have in Groveway, so we're pretty excited about that and looking forward to a great project and a great partnership with the Roswell Housing Authority. Move to approve.
That's second by Councilmember Price. Councilmember Eichelhardt.
First, let me make clear that I totally support this project and I hope it succeeds. but I have a major issue with us donating public tax dollars to this project. And I know it goes to the RHA and it has some public benefit of providing lower, below market housing. But we're essentially giving away Roswell tax dollars for no specific public benefit. Again, we talked about Greenville. They always got infrastructure, streetscapes, parking decks, something that has the broader benefit. And we're not. And again, I have no problem with the CDBG and other funds going to it, but just given $500,000 of our reserves, which we already know we don't have enough of.
Councilmember Eichelhart, what we're looking at right now is just identifying some funding from CDBG. The very next item, though, those comments will be just
Hold on to
right.
that, because I thought we were on 5-2, and I was like, wait, is this 6? Oh, sorry. So, never mind. Well, then I really am for CDBG money for going for this.
Correct.
Other discussion? Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously.
The next item is approval of a resolution in support of an application to Georgia Department of Community Affairs for 2012 low-income housing tax credits for the redevelopment of the Roswell Housing Authority veranda at Groveway project. And Councilman Eichelhart has already kind of led into the conversation, but there is an option that was presented in a memo here. One option is to have a $500,000 city grant, which I also do not support for the reasons Councilman Eichelhart stated. But we also can provide $650,000 to infrastructure improvements, and that would be streetscapes and utilities and so forth, which I do support. So with that being said, Mr. Fisher.
Thank you, Councilmember DiPolito. That's correct. There's a lot of changes going on in this. We've been working very diligently to try to come up with the best options. After we talked in the committee, we realized that there was also more than one way to get some of these points that the mayor had alluded to in trying to get these tax credits. And we're basically looking at 3 points that are extremely important to us. One way to get those points was to have the city do a $500,000 grant in cooperation with some other grant funds that were going to that project. But we could also support the project as a city by doing infrastructure, or what they call in the score sheet off-site improvements. Those off-site improvements would need to total up to at least $650,000. It's many improvements that we're going to need to do. It'll be improvements for infrastructure. Even without doing any real engineering yet for the project, there's roughly $475,000 worth of water alone. Infrastructure improvements that would need to be done, as $475,000 without even looking at engineering.
All right, so 6 was for the 500. But Mr. DiPolito, who his department is saying he's withdrawn his support for this and now wants to support 650 for infrastructure improvements. Is that what I understand?
Let me clarify. There's several components to this. There's a home grant. There's $50,000 for a 2012 home grant, $50,000 for a 2013 home grant, and then in lieu of $500,000 toward the project costs, I'm saying we put in $650,000.
Well, where I'm going is this is not currently on the agenda. What your proposal is not currently, or is it?
It is.
Oh, it is.
It's an alternative.
All right, so it is on. It's legitimately on the agenda. Correct. I apologize. I didn't catch that right away.
It's an alternative.
Okay.
What we have
so
on
we're fine. I'm fine procedurally here. I just want to make sure we're good.
Correct. What we have on the agenda is to get support to be able to give to the Roswell Housing Authority for this project. How we get to that support, I think, is what some of the discussion is. Originally, there was a $500,000 city grant. However, it looks like we can also do up to $650 in infrastructure improvements to get the same points.
But anyway, Mr. DiPolito is proposing a $650,000 investment in infrastructure in this area.
Correct.
So it would not be a grant, it would be a city infrastructure project.
Correct. And may I say
And-
along
and
with
again, if you can define the infrastructure project for us, I know the amount's 650, but specifically, what would the infrastructure be?
Specifically, I can't because the engineering is not yet completed. All we have really is concepts,
Is it
but it
water
looks like
lines?
it's going to
Is
be
it streets?
water. It can be probably some sidewalks, connection within the Groveway area. I don't know what we'll need on the streets yet. I know there's going to be a street connection at the end of the project. So streets, sidewalks, water, and possibly some stormwater. At least those 4 infrastructures should be improved for this project.
So the form of the motion would be this is unusual for us, but we can do this. It would be a motion to commit $650,000 for infrastructure improvements. Now,
Correct.
what I understood is that if the project does not move forward, we might not commit this. We might withdraw.
All
Reallocate.
of the support that we're talking about tonight is contingent upon the award of the tax credits from Georgia DCA to the project.
Right. So, Mr. Dippolito, it's a confusing motion, but if you want to get Mr. Halsey's help, that's fine. But I want to try to get the motion clear on the table here, rather than what it was. I want to know what it is.
Okay.
What is the motion?
Councilmember Dippolito, can I make one more comment before you make the motion?
Absolutely.
To the $650,000 is the commitment that we need for the infrastructure to be able to support the project. The 2012 home grant, just the 2012 home grant of $50,000 will still need to go to the Roswell Housing Authority because they are qualified CHODO. It fits perfectly within that grant. They're the only ones that can use is them or Habitat anyway, and that would allow us to still get the 2 points that they need from the grant side. So it's $50,000 for the 2012 home, which we just accepted, and then the $650,000 infrastructure
Let's do
improvement.
one at a time.
Well, that's all for the same support. We've already
I
approved
understand
the
it all
50.
goes to the same place, but let's try to get one motion at
Okay.
a time.
$50,000 from the
There's going to be a $50,000
2012.
motion and it's $650 motion.
Mr. Fisher, we approved
50's already done.
No, we approved
Nope.
177,
All right, so let's do one at a time. I understand they're all going to add together, but let's do one at a time.
We approved the 177 if we were doing the $500,000 city grant.
We're not. Don't confuse us.
Well, that's what he's asking, though. But we don't need to use the 177 if you all are going to go with the 650 infrastructure. That will go back to the city for a city project.
All right, so do we want to
If you do the 650
make
infrastructure,
let's do this. Let's see if we get the 650 passed.
Correct.
And if
That's-
we get the 650 passed, I'll bring it back to the council to see if they want to eliminate the 177. Councilmember Wynn.
How much money is needed to help with this grant?
$650,000 for infrastructure and $50,000 from the 2012 home that you
So
approved.
$700,000 would make them very happy.
Correct.
That's what I'm hearing.
Correct.
So, but if we keep the 177, can we still kick in the 50? If we keep the 177 where it is, then can we take ours down to 500,000?
No, because it's a separate area. The off-site improvements have to be at least $648,000.
Gotcha.
So we're doing $650,000 to make sure that we've got enough in that one.
That's right, that's what we just said. Okay, that's where I was getting my confusion. Okay, I'm fine now.
All right, Mr. Dippolito. Councilmember Diamond, do you have a question?
Yeah, I'm not sure that means we can eliminate that 177. I'm seeing that.
I
as a
see some
separate-
shaking heads, so I have
Yeah.
no idea either, because this has changed since we've
Ms. Love?
originally done this.
I think in the memo providing the backup, the total commitment that we're talking about, and you can change it, is $927,587. That includes the $177,000. So
It
if we
does.
change that makeup, then we need to provide that explanation. You've already voted on the $50,000 accepting the home.
Right.
All right. So let me see if I understand this. If we want to maximize the points that are available to us, if you could restate what we need to, we've already passed the 50. What else do we need to pass to maximize the points?
$650,000 for infrastructure improvements.
Yep.
Do we
And the
not also-
$50,000 from the 2012 home.
Right?
And
does the 177 give us any more points?
No, my understanding that was all we needed.
So if the council wishes to, they can, but if they're doing it to maximize the points, that's not really adding any more points. So we'll reconsider that after we've passed the 650. All right, so is there a motion to approve $650,000? Yes, Councilmember Diamond.
Sorry, can we get clarification from the people who are submitting this? Because I'm not sure we've got this right.
If they can clear up the confusion, and if we're confused, and please let us know. I'm not confused, but I'm prepared to be.
I'm Dave Schmidt, representing the Housing Authority and our firm. There are two categories. There's a grant side, which gets points, and there's the off-site improvement that gets points. In order for us to get 2 points on the grant side, we have to get to about $650,000 there. With the city, we were talking about $50,000 home in 2 years, plus $170,000 in CDBG, and the Housing Authority was going to make up the difference out of their own funds to get those 2 points. And then you go over to the other category, which is off-sites, that has to be $650,000. So we get 1 point there and 2 points here. So we've got to have 2 $50,000 home grants and the $170,000 that was CDBG. That gets us the points on the...
So you get more points for the 177.
That's right.
All right, that's what I need now.
Right.
That helps.
So if we don't have the two $50,000 home over the 2 years and the 170 on the CDBG, if those are approved, those take care of the points on the grant side, and the 650 takes care of the points on the off-site improvements. So yeah, there's 2 different buckets, if you will.
Does the council understand this? If we want to maximize, we need all of it. Councilmember DiPolito.
One question on the. We've already approved the 2012 home grant. We've already approved the 177. On the 2013 home grant, is that to the Housing Authority?
It would be, again, because they would still be a qualifying CHODO. We don't have any of those papers yet, so that would be a part of the support letter that we would send in.
Thank you.
And I would clarify, both sides are all conditioned on the award of the tax credits. If not, they all stay with the city or home or what have you.
Councilmember DiPolito, are you prepared to make a motion?
I am. Councilmember Price has a question.
Councilmember Price.
Yes, I'm excited about this project and the ability to facilitate it. However, I'm just curious where this $650,000 would come from. Is it in our budget this year, or would we take it from the mid-year budget adjustment that we're talking about might happen, or what is the plan?
Mr. Mayor, may I answer?
Okay, you'll answer the question.
Councilmember Price, I think when we come back with the specifics for water lines, we have water fund money that can make a contribution to that. It will be up to the council to ultimately decide that it will come out of some reserves of some fund, whether it's a combination of water fund and general fund, all water fund, all general fund, depending on what that infrastructure actually winds up being, related to straight up water lines or sidewalk stormwater.
If it comes out of there.
Could be stormwater utility. So it depends on exactly what infrastructure, but it would be reserves.
And we have sufficient money in reserve.
Yes, sir, we do.
Other questions? Councilmember DiPolito, you want to make another try at your motion after we...
Would you like this in 2 separate motions for the 2?
I'd like the 650 in one motion.
Okay. Then I will do that first. I'd make a motion for the city to provide funds to the Roswell Housing Authority veranda at Groveway project for specific infrastructure needs in the amount of $650,000.
Just a clarification, we're not giving them the money. We're going to be spending money that's in this area for sidewalks,
Correct.
water, streets, and other infrastructure.
Public infrastructure.
It'll be public infrastructure. We're not. It'll benefit them, but it's not going to them.
Correct.
And if this tax credits are not granted, then it's conditional upon that.
Correct.
All right. We have a motion. Do we have a second? Second by Councilmember Diamond. Further discussion. Councilmember Eichelhardt.
After our last discussion there, I don't feel so bad about being confused anymore. Everybody else apparently was too. But it sounds like he's talking about this one, so I apologize for that. But clearly I was so adamantly opposed to giving the money away that I had my blinders on for that. But when we put money towards public infrastructure aspects, I think that does change it. I'm still a little uncomfortable because does that mean every project that comes down the road after this, then we're also going to put towards that, and we don't have the money to do that. But as this applies to the whole area, that's what we're trying to do with Groveway and all. I can actually support that. So there's my comment. That's where I was.
Other questions? Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Any further discussion by council? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously.
My next motion is for the approval of $50,000 in 2013 home grant funds to the Roswell Housing Authority.
No, that would be a grant to the Roswell Housing Authority.
Right, through the home funds.
Through the home funds. We have a motion. Do we have a second? Motion by Councilmember DiPolito, second by Councilmember Wynn. Any questions? The motion was to approve $50,000 from the home grant
2013
for 2013 to go to the Roswell Housing Authority. Does anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Any further discussion by council? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously.
And Mr. Fisher, you're wearing me out tonight with all these motions. Next motion is approval of a resolution accepting the 2012 Community Development Block Grant and Budget Amendment 2211 5000-05-30-12B in the amount of $417,613.
Thank you, Councilmember DiPolito. This one is really straightforward here. It's the CDBG funds that we have been working on for quite some time. We finally got the letter in for the acceptance of the award. This is the resolution for you to accept those funds, with the Child Development Association getting $50,000. The City of Roswell Rec and Parks, $177,587. Drake House, $25,000. Home Stretch, $40,000. North Fulton Community Charities of $25,000. Senior Services of North Fulton, $10,000. YMCA of $10,000. And the remainder going to the City of Roswell for administration of these grants for a total of $417,613.
Does the council have any questions? Do we have a motion?
We have a lot of wonderful charities and nonprofits in Roswell. This goes a long way to helping them do what they do for our Roswell citizens. So I move to approve.
Is there a second? Motion by Councilmember DiPolito. Who was first down there? That was Councilmember Price, I think, was first. Anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, raise your hands. Passes unanimously.
The next item is approval for the mayor and or city administrator to sign the necessary pension plan documents with the Georgia Municipal Employees Benefit System and the International City-County Management Association for implementation of the pension plan design for individuals hired on or after March 1st, 2011. And before Mr. Roach presents this item, I have had discussions since the last committee meeting with pretty much all of the council members, and I think we're going to take another look at some other ideas we've had for the defined contribution plan. And I would, rather than present this item, I'd like to make a motion to defer it to the next council meeting.
Motion to defer. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilmember Wynn. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion to defer, raise their hands. Passes unanimously. This time, I believe we're to Councilmember Nancy Diamond.
Question?
Yes.
On the previous issue, is it something that we as council need to discuss again, or will we put this on a committee agenda, or what will be the change between now and the next meeting?
My thought was to have Mr. Roach distribute some information. If you're uncomfortable bringing it to council, we certainly can bring it back to committee. But their goal was to try to get this resolved pretty quickly so we can move on. And
do we have a committee meeting between now and the next council meeting?
Yes, it would be the 12th. It would be the day after.
So when are you asking to defer this to?
I was deferring it to the next council meeting,
which is prior to the committee meeting. So we would not have it at a committee meeting unless there's a council requested.
Yeah. If the council's not comfortable, I can defer it again to after the next committee meeting.
We have a motion and a second. It's passed. We can have this discussion about you and Mrs. Councilmember Price can talk about bringing it forward. Because we didn't bring it forward to a specific date. We'll bring it forward when you wish to.
Well, I did make a motion for the next council meeting.
Well, if you wish to, you can always defer it. All right. There's a motion. That motion is passed. And to Community Development, Councilmember Nancy Diamond.
Thank you, sir. This is for approval of the Unified Development Code Steering Committee appointments. Ms. Alice Wakefield.
This is a request to approve and to appoint the Unified Development Code Steering Committee. The committee is proposed to be made up of 20 members. 12 of those members will be from the various boards and commission, with the full Planning Commission, the DRB, the Historic Preservation Commission, the Board of Zoning Appeals, a representative from the Comprehensive Plan Advisory Committee, and the Downtown Development Authority. The remaining 8 will be made up of community representatives. And with that, staff asks that it be approved, please.
Do we have a motion?
I make a motion to approve the names. Do you want me to read them out?
Please.
Okay. The following appointed to the UDC Steering Committee: Cheryl Greenway, Brian Chamberlain, Lisa DeCarbo, Sydney Dodd, it's D-O-D-D, Joe Piontek, Mark Rainier, Harvey Smith, John Caruth, Tony Landers, Glenn Maggiola, Jim Paris, Monica Hagewood, Eric Clementi, Michael Gould, Chad Mann, Ian Mari, Angelia Parham, Denise Rausch, Cliff Rodenizer, and Allison Vrolik.
Is there a motion?
That was my motion.
That was motion to approve. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Eichelhardt. Anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? Any further discussion by council? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously. This time we'll call upon Councilmember Eichelhardt, liaison to Environmental Public Works.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is approval for the mayor and or city administrator to sign contracts for standby engineering design services with 6 different companies, and they've gone through a process to determine who's the best for those, and I'll have Mr. Mooring tell us a little bit about that.
Yes, sir. Thank you. This is the second round of standby engineering contracts that we have done in the Environmental Public Works Department for services in the Water Resources Division. We had 33 firms who had submitted qualifications. Through a qualifications-based selection process, we narrowed that down to the 6 firms that are listed, and they will be selected individually for specific task orders, as we have done with the firms currently on our list. This would be a yearly renewable contract with these firms up to 3 years, at which time it would need to be go out and solicit proposals once again. I'll be happy to take any questions you might have.
Does the council have any questions? Do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Motion for approval by Councilmember Eichelhardt. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Orleans. Any further discussion? Anyone in the audience have any questions or comments? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
At this time, we'll call upon Liaison of the Public Safety Department, Councilmember Becky Wynn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and before I start, I want to wish Mr. Bob Halsey a happy birthday. This is a great way to celebrate his birthday, sitting with these lovely people up here, so very happy birthday, Bob. Mr. Mayor, we did have one that was pulled off the consent agenda. Would you like for me to read that one now? Okay. I'm going to do that one first, Chief Orrick, the one that was pulled off the consent agenda.
Okay.
Okay. Even though it's under Human Resources, is it all right if I do that, sir? Okay. Approval of a revision to the Human Resources Policies and Procedures Manual regarding command appointments. Mr. Roach, are you going to present that?
Yes, ma'am, I will. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. This item effectively allows flexibility in the assignment of the ranks of captain, major, and deputy chief in the police department to command appointments, which effectively removes them from the classified or merit system protected divisions of the city government into the unclassified or at-will status in the city government. That allows greater opportunity for flexibility in those appointments and unity of command, and making sure that we have the right people in those positions at the right time. So we would respectfully request your approval of the policy change.
Councilmember Wynn.
I'm going to turn this over to Councilmember Orland, since he's the one that wanted to have some questions on it.
Councilmember Orland, do you have any questions, comments?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify a point that both Councilwoman Wynn and I brought up in the committee meeting. On the first page, in the red paragraph at the bottom, where it says the following persons are appointed by the city administrator, and then it says with the recommendation of the chief of police, and inserted in there should be and the HR director. Now, I understand, of course, that, and it was outlined at the very end, that the HR director is involved in the hiring process, but I think in committee we were talking about the recommendation at this point coming from the chief of police would also include the HR director. So I just wanted to make that correction to the to this amendment.
There are provisions currently in policy that address, I believe, address that issue. Section 3.6.4 regarding involvement in selection processes indicates that the HR director is required to be involved in selection activities for individuals at the level of division director and above. The next section, 3.6.5, indicates that department heads make recommended hiring decisions to the HR director for review and approval. And all of those recommendations, I have the authority per this policy as currently written to accept or reject the recommended hire, and if I reject a hire, the department head can appeal that to Ms. Love. Regrettably, I'd have to confess to you that over time it appears we've had some practices evolve that aren't consistent with policy. Ms. Love has directed me to engage a very thorough audit of our hiring practices to make sure that what we're doing in practice matches what we say we're going to do in policy, and that review is underway. So those provisions are currently in policy.
Well, and I understand in the involvement in it and so forth, but, and maybe Mr. Halsey can comment on this, but in committee we were talking about in this position, you know, the appointment's made by the city administrator, and it says with the recommendation of chief of police, and we were talking about including there with the recommendation of the HR director. So your involvement in the process may not be the same thing as a recommendation. So that's all I was trying to, that's what we talked about in committee, and that's what I was trying to clarify in here in the wording. So I don't know, Mr. Halsey.
It wouldn't hurt to put it in. I don't think it conflicts with the other. I don't know that it's necessary, but people don't always read the other provisions, so it might be a good idea to have it in the one.
Yes, sir.
So there is that a motion to amend?
Yes, sir.
The policy, is there a second? Second by Councilman Eichelhart. Discussion of that motion to amend. All in favor of the motion to amend? Passes unanimously. All in favor of the main motion?
We haven't made a main motion yet.
Well, let's hear the main motion.
I make a motion to accept the approval of a revision of the Human Resources Policies and Procedures Manual regarding command appointments with the amendment from Councilmember Orleans.
We have a motion. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember Orleans. All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Got you now, this one. Approval of a resolution authorizing the City of Roswell to apply for a grant in the amount of $5,000 offered by Target. Chief Warwick.
What we're asking for tonight is a resolution approving for us to accept the grant for $5,000 from Target. They periodically will call us as a neighborhood grant program that they offer throughout the nation to law enforcement agencies, and we propose to use this money to implement a program called Rad Kids. It's a self-defense program that teaches kids how to avoid a lot of negative behaviors like aggressive dog behavior, dog encounters, bullying, how to use 911, as well as if somebody was trying to abduct them. It's a 10-hour training class, and basically we'll use this money to pay for one-time expenditures that's needed to teach the class.
Is there a motion?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second? Motion to approve the application for the grant by Councilmember Wynn, second by Councilmember DiPolito. Councilmember Price.
Just a question, where would this be held?
I'm sorry?
Where would we hold this?
Varying locations. We're working with Parks and Recreation about using some of their facilities and their communications also.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously. This time we'll call upon Councilmember Jerry Orleans, liaison to Recreation and Parks Department.
Item on our agenda is approval for the mayor and/or city administrator to sign a contract with Roswell Bikes, Inc. for bike rental and concessions down on the river in the Don White Memorial Park area. And Mr. Glover is here to explain or answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Orleans. Again, we originally had a original contract with Roswell Bikes, which we went back and renegotiated. At that time, this facility would be at the house located on 925 Riverside Road. It's formerly Thomas Threet House, was a brick house. We've now refurbished the outside and done a lot of work. This contract would begin actually in July the 1st of 2012. The changes in the contract from 2012 to March of 2013, he would be paying us a minimum of $500 a month or 5% of the sales. And the beginning in March of 2013, he would pick up the original agreement paying $1,500 a month. Now, during the first 6 months, he has to do some rehab of the building. There's some work needs to be done, some electrical, maybe changing doors and do some other stuff to fit his needs. So he will do all that work, and we will. He will not pay us during that time frame, but we will. The money that he would have paid us, would pay all the maintenance fees of that.
Do we have a motion?
Move for approval of the signing of the contract.
Motion by Councilman Orleans. Is there a second? Second by Councilmember DiPolito. Does the council have any questions? I see we probably have somebody with Bike Roswell here, but it's probably good to just sit there and be quiet. You got a motion and a second. Further discussion? Councilmember Wynn.
No, I'm fine. I just reread it.
Is there any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously. Good job representing Bike Roswell.
No, I'm representing the bike shop.
Oh, well then, come forward and be heard. I thought you were with Bike Roswell. I'm sorry. I should have known. I should have recognized you were so far back. I know you're with
Fresh Bike Service.
Fresh Bike Service. Yes, sir. And we're going to cancel that vote because I didn't give you an opportunity to speak. We'll vote again after we hear from you.
I was just curious how many entities were offered the potential to open concessions type operation with the Park and Rec Department, as other contracts will be bidded out to other businesses. And considering the commissions or concessions paid out, how that 5% number came about, and what's the the recourse if it's a full-on operational bike shop operating in the city. You know, where does it cut off? Are you going to, like, his salespeople make 10% commission, so why is the city going to cap their possible dollar amount at 5% at the end of the day? And is it just going to be bike rentals, or are you going to allow them to operate a full-on operational bike shop in a city park?
Joe, if you could respond.
Yeah, I think I've heard all the questions. Now, we actually submitted a bid. It was in the newspaper, advertised as far as the whole project's concerned. It was advertised for 3 weeks, open to any and all bidders. The proposals came in from the bike shop. Well, I'd say there's only one bidder. So the proposal was written from him, turned in as his bid. He didn't know if anybody else had bid on it at that time or not. The negotiated amount was basically what Roswell Bike turned in, and that was accepted by us at that point. So, but he does it. This agreement does allow him to have a concession and bike rental and bike shop in that facility.
So he can sell bicycles?
Yes, sir.
All right. How often does this concession come up for rebidding?
This is good for 10 years, but it's negotiable, I think, every 3 years.
So this contract is valid for 3 years, and after 3 years, if someone else was interested in bidding on this, could they?
I think the contract is basically for 10 years, and at the end of 3 years, we would negotiate the dollar amount. All right, Mr. Halsey?
And I don't want to... 10 years is a long term. Is there a reason that we took 10 years and not a shorter term?
Again, this was a proposal from Roswell Bike.
I would have trouble committing to 10 years for this lease. I know there's going to be startup costs. I know there's going to be investment in there. But to lock this in for 10 years, I'm not comfortable with.
Chair.
Yes, Councilman Orleans.
Two things. I think there are options of getting out of the contract. I know I brought that issue up before the last committee meeting. But secondly, Joe, my understanding was there wasn't any bike sales out of there, that it was strictly bike rentals and concession and doing some minor repairs and so forth as people may be down there on their bikes, but that it was primarily rental and there wasn't even enough room to have bikes in there. I'm sure that the exposure would help back to their bike shop, but I don't believe there was any actual bike shop sales down there at our location.
There's bike sales. There is bike sales in the agreement. Excuse me?
How's the agreement read, Mr. Halsey?
The amendment restricts it to manage and operate bicycle rental concessions. Thank you. The amendment of April 10, 2012 states that it's to manage and operate bicycle rental concession services for the city of Roswell. And that would supersede anything in the earlier agreement.
So, Mr. Halsey, is it your opinion if this proposal passes that would not be allowed the sale of bicycles?
And that's my understanding. That's how I would interpret the contract.
Right. I still do have a problem with 10 years. I mean, unless there's a substantial capital improvements that we need to write off over 10 years, I have a little trouble committing to full 10 years. I think it needs to come. How often does for example, does the outfitters, the Chattahoochee River folks, how often does that come up?
We do that about every 3 years.
And again, I think it should be more on that cycle than 10 years to be consistent. And because 10 years is a long time. Councilmember DePolito.
Mr. Mayor, it was my understanding that the tenant was going to do some substantial improvements to the premises, which is the reason for the long term.
That's correct.
Then I need to hear about that.
How much money did the rec department put into the improvements already?
We'll recognize you later, but I want to first get these answers up.
The building itself is going to require quite a bit of electrical work that needs to be done. We could have done a lot of that prior to this agreement, but with the way that I think the shop's going to operate, we needed him to be able to dictate where the electrical outlets were, what type of lighting he needed to have, what kind of doors and door locks and door frames, etc. He needs a very secure facility. We felt like it'd be better for him to do that to his standards and make it as safe as he wanted it, then we would deduct that from his rent.
Do we know what the capital investment is to do the tenant improvements?
What his investment would be?
Yeah.
It could be as much as anywhere from $3,000 to $6,000, I think, at this point.
Again, $3,000 to $6,000 is not what put in that substantial capital improvements. It's capital improvement, but I don't think it reaches that point of 50 or 100,000. It's. I'd still be more comfortable with a shorter term. I don't know how the rest of the council feels. That's just my feeling about it. Councilmember DiPolito.
Mr. Mayor, may I offer up the services of our budgeting department to help run some numbers and perhaps come up with a reasonable term based on the tenant's investment and the amount of funding that we're going to receive from this?
I'm fine with that. If it's, the more it is, I recognize the more important. But if we don't know exactly what that number is and that's in question, I'd be fine with deferring it. Councilmember Diamond.
Was there anything in the RFP about a timeline or a contract length?
I can't remember exactly what it said. It's been so long ago now, but we had originally planned to have it open early in the spring as possible. We felt like that would be advantageous to get the word out to make it. It's going to be summer is going to be a successful part of the whole operation. The fall and winter, there's going to be probably very little activity there. So we wanted it open as soon as possible, and with the delay, we basically renegotiated the whole contract.
Councilmember Love.
No, sir. City Administrator Love.
City Administrator Love.
I'm going to stay on my side of the fence. The term of the contract. Yes, sir. The term of the contract was specified in the request for qualifications. It was actually an RFQ that was sent out, and a 10-year term was stated in there. We are not bound by that, but that was stated in there.
Chair.
Yes, Councilman Orleans.
Mr. Halsey, can you explain what options we have of getting out of the contract or renegotiating the contract as it's going along? Because I remember that was a question I had asked after the committee meeting, or after the last meeting, before the committee meeting. And I thought we had some provisions in there if needed.
In the main contract, 6.1 says that if there's any default in the contract, that the other party can ask for cure within 30 days, and that the City of Roswell, in its sole reasonable judgment, determine that such services are inadequate, unsatisfactory, no longer needed, or substantially not conforming. It can terminate the agreement upon 30 days' notice. This language gives the city pretty much unilateral power to terminate upon 30 days' notice.
I'm not as comfortable in that interpretation because there needs to be cause to terminate. And I think I'd be more comfortable with the approach we take with the Chattahoochee Outfitters, which is, periodically putting it back up. If there's not, subject to this, retiring what this tenant improvement is.
And let me suggest and again, because it's in a lot of investments up front and trying to get this business moving and going along, it's going to take time just before people know it's there and be coming into it. So I would suggest the initial maybe being 5 years with renewables after that 5-year initial term. Will that work, Joe, do you think?
Well, I don't know when you say the substantial front-end investment, I've heard $4,000 to $6,000. Then I've heard other numbers. I'm not, 4,000 to 6,000 is not a substantial.
No, I mean from the standpoint of having staff down there, having we've got outlined in there, except for the beginning parts of the contract, we've got outlined in there the hours they have to be open. So they'll have staff investment there just being open, and I just think getting this started is going to take some time.
Why don't we compromise and make it 5 years initial term, 3 years after that? Re-up it on 3-year terms. Because once you get past that initial startup, I think it's...
Right, that's what I'm saying. The initial would be 5 years. And after that, I don't care if it's 1 year, 3-year renewals, but I think just given the opportunity of getting it started for the 5-year period.
I'd be more comfortable with the 5 and maybe the 5 and 3. Yes, Councilman DiPolito.
Thank you. I'm comfortable with a shorter term. My question for Mr. Halsey is, since this was bid out as a 10-year term, does that nullify this agreement altogether?
No, I don't think so. We'd have to get the agreement. They can refuse to enter into the contract if the council says this is what we're comfortable in doing. Council sets the parameters. They can shorten the term. We put it out there. He did it, and we'd have to go back to him and say, do you agree to that? If he doesn't agree, then we'll have to do another bid.
Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Love.
And to add to that, this was not a bid. It was a request for qualifications. So we are not bound by anything in there except by this contract. So it was not a price only or the scope of work. It was, we put it out there, tell us who is qualified and make a proposal to us about how you might execute that business, and we identify the scope of work. So we are wide open on that. It's to the contract that would be the issue. So from a procurement standpoint, we're not bound by that because it's an RFQ.
Back to our bike shop owner. Any questions or comments you have at this time?
My last question is there a cap on how much money that the city of Roswell taxpayers can expect to collect off of the concessions or the 5%? You know, I believe I read in the article that I found out late tonight that this was going on, that it would cap at $2,000. Your average bike shop in the U.S. earns over $500,000 a year. Roswell Bicycles itself is over $3 million a year, and it's an established business in Roswell. And granted, they might maybe not do sales per se out of there, but it's not going to be hard to do a satellite sale over to the other shop. It's just kind of, I wanted to ask the questions and make sure that the Roswell taxpayers are getting the benefits of helping a business operate in one of their city parks.
We appreciate it. Joe, can you answer that question?
Yeah, the minimum starting in April of 2013 would be $1,500 a month. The maximum would be $2,000.
Why did we put a maximum on this thing?
Again, that was from Roswell Bicycle.
I don't understand the maximum. Councilmember Diamond.
You know, had there been more than one bidder, that might not have flown, but that was the bid, and that's what we accepted.
We have not accepted. We're voting on accepting it tonight. That was the bid. We don't have to accept this. We can say, I don't understand why we've got a cap.
We didn't put a cap in the request
he proposed the cap, but we don't have to accept his proposal.
Sure.
Yes, Councilmember Orleans.
I had that question, and I had about an hour conversation with the applicant to try to determine where this came from. And number one, it was the one bid. And he gave me, unfortunately I don't have all my notes with me tonight, but in that conversation he was outlining the average bike rentals in the U.S. and I mean, rental business is not that great to start with, and he was convinced that we wouldn't even get to $2,000. So I was just trying to get some background information on it, and that's where he was coming from, and he put it into the contract.
Well, my suggestion would be is that perhaps rather than just a flat cap, if it goes up, maybe we collect less and encourage him to lease more. But I'm not comfortable with just, I don't know enough about bike shop rentals to cap it. I don't know, why we're capping it.
And that was the-
$2,000. It's a, it's a building. If you lease that building, just as a building itself, now is it $2,000 a month?
Yes. 1,500 minimum, 2,000 max.
Again, he's not worried about hitting that 2,000. I don't know why, because he says he's not going to rid it, but then he puts the cap on that, so I don't get it.
That was the other side of it, then it would not be a minimum if we went up, and I know Parks and Rec wanted to have that minimum coming into the $1,500 a month, and it's averaging out all year round when most of the sales would be in a couple months in the summer. So those were the different reasons presented, right, wrong, or indifferent.
I have no knowledge of what bike shop rentals do and the seasonal, so I'm not in a position to comment. But you're right. I can see in the winter months, he's probably not going to make his number. And so maybe, what do we think the fair market rental value of that house is just as a building?
We'd estimated earlier, if we had received $1,000 a month rental on that building for any group, I thought we would have done extremely well.
Did we ask anybody in the real estate business what they thought fair market rental was on that house?
No, sir.
And I'm not sure how much expertise y'all have on staff.
We don't.
On the other hand, I'd like to get this thing wrapped up because I know we need to move forward with it. Councilmember Diamond.
I know we're focusing on the maximum here, but I think that the thing that struck me in committee was that they were guaranteeing a minimum of $1,500 when they weren't established. They're starting kind of mid-season almost, and they're not established, and they're guaranteeing that all through the winter when they're not going to have a full-bore rental business. So, I can't imagine it doesn't average out. I'm not a real estate expert either, but, we advertised it, we went through the proper bid process, and we made an agreement, and, we absolutely can adjust it, but to go back and start from scratch.
I'm not trying to start from scratch. Councilmember Price. This is going to get me in trouble because I get most of my parts over there.
Well,
I'm sinking myself, but
I think that Councilmember Diamond's comment, if you look at the amended amendment, that doesn't kick in for a year, so that should.
Isn't that because they're making improvements?
Yes.
Yes, and we're starting so late in this season that the full $1,500 agreement will not start till 2013.
But my other comment was on number 2, even in the amended one, you mentioned before that they were not to have sales, or is that prohibited? Mr. Halsey, was sales prohibited or allowed?
Not prohibited, but it says that they're operating it says that they're operating bicycle rental concessions. So my interpretation is that we don't anticipate sales there. That's just the bicycle rental and concessions.
If that's the case, if sales are not going to happen, then maybe the wording needs to be changed to number 2.
Well, I personally would support sales over there if it raised more money for the city. I mean, I'm beating up the rec department because they're not raising enough revenue, and in this case, I appreciate y'all raising revenue. I'm doing everything I can to get the revenues up.
However, if it's referred to another location, then there are no sales there, and we're going to get 5% of sales of which there are none, then we get nothing.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we cut it back to 4 and live with this thing?
Well, my simple recommendation was to change the word sales to proceeds, and then you can decide whatever else that entails.
Does that solve any problems, Mr. Halsey?
We can use the word proceeds. That'll be fine.
Thank you.
Councilmember, not Councilmember,
yeah, me.
City Administrator Lamar.
I would respectfully request that we define on behalf of the person that we're contracting with, proceeds from an accounting standpoint, a business standpoint, may or may not be defined the same way from tax purposes and everything else. Gross sales, in the request for proposal, there's a schedule of what the bike rentals will be, or rehabilitations, or whatever you do to a bike, oil a chain, or whatever it is in there. So we know what that scope is. I don't know about specifically selling a new bike. I didn't see that in there, but I haven't read every word of it. So I would caution you about using proceeds in a contract of this nature.
Well, here's the question. I would support him selling bikes. I don't know if the rest of the council, if he sells bikes out of there, does that count toward his revenue?
Yes.
So it's clear already in the contract.
Gross sales would include that.
So, Councilmember Price, how does proceeds change?
Well, I just want to make sure that sales, if that's what we're asking them to do, includes rentals.
Yes, it does.
This is sales as in like what gets rung up on the cash register or accounted for, so it's sales, not necessarily selling a bike, but rentals, those fees, those are considered sales.
And the power
right.
bars.
That people are making a transaction or a purchase. Now, to the point about selling bicycles, with a cap of $2,000, it would be better for the sales not to occur at that location.
Right.
We would want the sales to be from the rentals so that we would have the opportunity to grow that and receive that revenue, and it would be best that the sales did not occur at that location.
Why?
So that we can get the maximum amount of revenue. That if a lot of sales occur, they could reach that $2,000 very quickly outside of the rentals.
But how does that maximize your revenue?
On the rentals, it does.
Councilman Orleans.
Yeah, we're going in different directions now. My understanding, and Mr. Halsey clarified, and I guess I would have Parks and Rec clarify, that under the current setup, it would be rentals only, and then minor repairs. Somebody driving by and has a chain break or something that's already down there, but no bike sales. And in the whole explanation of bike rentals and what they brought in, that $1,500 minimum Parks wanted was good, and a $2,000 would have worked out to be probably more than a max of anything he would sell. But then if you start putting actual bicycle sales in there, then yes, we should not have a cap on the $2,000, because theoretically then with the bicycle sales, the total sales and revenue would go up. And the contract is based on the total sales and revenue, because that's the easiest way for us to check on them. You can't do it on net revenue or profits after expenses, because then things can be manipulated. But if he's turning in actual sales from that location on a monthly basis, that 5% is easy to calculate. It's based on total sales, nothing being taken off, no expenses off or anything. So it's kind of like an apple and orange here based on whether bicycle sales are allowed there. And then we are getting away from what the whole intent was just making bicycle rentals available and not letting the sale of bicycles on park property. So, we're going in different directions, and we got to clarify.
Revenue for the rec department, and the more revenue I raise for the rec department, the better. That's my intent. Your intent may be to rent bikes. My intent is to raise revenue for Joe.
Then the other side of it, if we're going to take that cap off of $2,000, then we need to eliminate any minimum, because it's going to be up and down. And so, yeah, if we're going to benefit from the max, we need to not charge him on the minimum.
Let me just suggest that we shorten the term from 5 years to 3 or 4, and then we can renegotiate this thing.
Right, I would agree with that, just to see how this whole thing goes. Excuse me. And then
we'll have a track record, and if we're leaving a lot of money on the table, he's making a ton of money, we can renegotiate it. 5 years, and if he's losing money, he can say he can get out of it in 3 years. I'd prefer 3 years again, unless there's a substantial investment in this startup, which I haven't heard about.
Well, there was, and again, I don't remember, there was some concern about a very short contract because of the startup and getting it rolling and the cost of employees. So
3.5 years. Give him your first.
Three is fine.
Do a 4-year one and
Well, give him
negotiate from there.
If this summer's about gone, give him give this summer plus 3 full summers.
That'd be 4 years. It'd be 4 years then.
Sounds fair to me.
Can he terminate?
I don't think so. Can he terminate?
We can terminate.
Can he bail out? The termination for cause, I mean, I know we could trump up a reason, but I think we, it sounds like, we don't have the option just to terminate for any reason. We got it without cause. I don't think we have the right. What is his option to terminate, Mr. Halsey?
He doesn't have one other than for cause.
4 years.
So,
Member Eichelhardt.
I imagine Mr. Kai was not here tonight because we talked about this before and thought everything's done. So I'm a little uncomfortable making all these changes without having any input.
But he can come back and say no deal.
well, at this point, from what I'm hearing, nothing is changing in the contract other than the initial period would be 4 years, and then renegotiated after 4 years.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable. That
So
gives him plenty of
keeping
time.
current minimums, keeping the current maximums, keeping no bicycle sales, keeping the startup over the first year.
Yeah, I think we ought to let him sell bicycles. I don't think it's going to, he's going to, the real bicycle sales he's going to do is he's going to, at the end of the season, he's going to sell his rental fleet. And if it raises more money for Joe, and I'm all for it. Gets more, I know it's competing with other bike shops. On the other hand, it's going to get more bikes on the street, which I support. All right, whose motion is it?
So for the start, then the motion is.
Well, we're starting over again because we didn't give the public a chance to vote. Mr. Orleans, it's your motion.
Move to accept the contract as presented, except for the stipulation of the initial period being 4 years and renegotiated after that.
Well, rebid it, not just renegotiate it. Open it back up for other folks to bid on.
Rebid it. Well, if we renegotiate and it doesn't work out to our habit, we'd rebid it anyway.
Well, there's a difference. Renegotiating is you're negotiating with one person. Rebidding is you're opening it back up for the public.
Well, and I'm thinking of the revenue renegotiation at that point.
So is it to rebid after the 4 years?
Sure.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Yes, Councilmember DiPolito.
I just want to clarify, it's 4 years from July 1, 2012, is that correct? Yes. 4 years.
From July 1, 2012. All right, we have a motion. Did I hear a second down there from Mrs. Price?
You did. Can you start any improvements prior to that date?
Absolutely.
Please turn on your microphone.
Yes, hello?
I have a concern about ending it in July. That doesn't seem like the term we want to stop or start with anybody. Can we make it maybe the end, like December, and then you've got the winter to regroup?
Well, I'm sure it would be rebid probably in January, long before.
You'd want to rebid it early on.
The July period would hit.
So you want the contract to end in the middle of the summer. So if somebody new comes in, they're going to have to start. I mean, it just seems like it ought to end at the end of the season, because neither party's going to benefit if you switch at that point.
So you're suggesting December?
Yes.
So December
1.
Three. He gets this summer plus 3 more summers, and then end in December.
Mm-hmm.
So when would that be? What would the term be?
Basically, about a 4.5 year, almost.
All right.
4.5.
Are you okay with that?
I'm fine with it. I was good 5.
So it's 4.5 years ending December. The
December
4 plus
2016.
4 years plus continue through December.
December 2016.
All right, we have a motion. Councilmember Price, are you still seconding that motion? We have a motion and a second. Further discussion. All in favor of the motion, raise their hands. Passes unanimously. We're trying to raise money for you.
Thank you.
And thank you for coming tonight. City Attorney's report.
Recommendation for closure to discuss personnel and acquisition of real estate.
Do we have a motion? Do we have a second? All in favor? Passes unanimously. We'll go to closure. Well, we survived and you got your budget passed. You got a budget. You got a budget in May. Relatively painless.
That's a special one. And that, we meant to say 2013.